across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, thank you to Julia. She's back on Monday right here at the home of Common Sense. This is Talk. So much to get through this afternoon. That new report revealing how a vast majority of the electorate now considers Britain to be more fractured and divided than it was even during the Brexit referendum. The sense of greater division is shared by a majority across every single social group, with the country perceived to be split along the lines of identity, age, geography and political beliefs. We'll be looking at that. Why is Britain more divided than ever? What is behind that? Also, this afternoon, the Strait of Hormuz has been declared shut by Tehran, which is accusing the United States of violating their ceasefire agreement. This comes amid fresh explosions targeting America's Arab allies, and yet Donald Trump maintains that the truce is still in effect. Who's telling the truth here? The United States or Iran? What a question. And France has turned down that proposition put forward by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, which suggests deploying British border force vessels to intercept those small boats and return them to French territory. Why is Britain, in that respect, having to go yet again to do the work of the French? We'll look at that in more detail too. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news, right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. So much to get through. Let's go back. Cast your mind back. June the 23rd, 2016. The morning Britain woke up and collectively discovered it didn't know its neighbours at all. And of course, that was absolutely key to everything. Why did they not know their neighbours anymore? Because it turns out that 52% versus 48% was the deciding factor with Brexit. Yes, close enough to settle nothing, large enough to settle everything. So, what followed was a masterclass in how to deepen a wound. The list on this is something else. 3 prime ministers in 3 years, each one with a fresh gift to the national nervous breakdown. Boris Johnson, prorogue in Parliament, remember that? It was ruled unlawful. And remember, by the way, how happy Boris was.
This is not an end, but a beginning. This is the moment when the dawn breaks and the curtain goes up on a new act in our great national drama.
Yeah, he said it's all good. Theresa May's deal, though, was defeated 3 times in the Commons, a hat-trick of humiliation. There was remember the Yellowhammer document? Cast your mind back. The Internal Markets Bill, which the government itself admitted would actually break the law in a very specific and limited way. Remember that phrase? Reassuring stuff. And then, of course, on top of all of that came culture wars, right on cue. Statues, flags. People lost their minds over flags.
The English flag isn't just a symbol of racism. It may be the primary symbol of racism in this country because of how it's been adopted and co-opted by the far right. In my mum's generation, it was keep Britain white and being chased down the street, being called a monkey. In my generation, it was a National Front telling me to go home. And now you've got the EDL, BNP, and all these other groups, right?
No, not really, right? I mean, yeah, you might have other groups, but for most people, it's a flag. It divided the room. Then we had the BBC, Gary Lineker, the unbooked former hero of the pitch, who morphed into an uninformed weirdo and divided the room like no other. And then, of course, the big one, gender wars.
Some females have a penis. Some females have been raped. But you can't exclude all females who have been raped from a space just because they've been raped. You can't banish all females who have a penis from a space just because they have a penis. Well, it's just like, this is not humanity, is it?
Yeah, it's not common sense either. Some females have a penis, did she say? Man alive. And we also had that phrase, levelling up, a slogan that meant absolutely nothing, a slogan that's still in search of a policy to go with it. The red wall fell. Metropolitan Liberals baffled. Everyone retired to their respective echo chambers and turned up the volume. And here we are, a decade on. 4 in 5 British adults now perceive the nation as divided, with over half believing political differences have become so extreme they pose a genuine danger to society. This is not a warning sign, it's a diagnosis. Brexit didn't break Britain. Maybe it handed up a gigantic mirror onto the country, but answer me this. Why is Britain more divided than ever? Did this just start from Brexit? Was there something else going on that fueled this? Social media clearly plays its part. But, you know, most of the country are not active on social media. Most of the country might sign up to something. They're usually flicking through mates' pictures on Insta. But that's kind of it. The average Joe in the UK is not an active poster or contributor to X or any of the others. So where does this come from? What's the reason we're more divided than ever? 0344 499 1000. Lines are open on that now. Let's get a word on this story and the other big stories of the day. Peter Barnes, political strategist, is back with us. Afternoon to you, Peter.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Do you remember not feeling that the country was sort of divided in this kind of way?
No, I don't actually, because I think it's entirely the wrong question to ask, because I think we've always been divided. The thing that really happened with Brexit was it brought the divide into people's faces and made the divide undeniable. And then after that, like you said, social media, as I always say, is an amplifier. It just turned it up to 11.
Yes.
Since the Brexit vote, it is now undeniable, as I say, to deny that there is any unity. It's not that we were always united before, it's that you can't deny now that we were ever united. This is the important difference to the
So
question.
it was always, it's a little bit like trying to work out, you know, what did technology make people angry, or was the anger always
Exactly,
there?
yeah.
But this, something kind of raised it to the surface.
Yeah, because you gave people who have never had a say in the system a say, and that's the point.
Everyone had the conch.
Yes.
Everyone had a microphone.
Yeah.
The stage, the spotlight was there for all.
Yeah, it didn't matter whether you're rich, poor, what ethnic minority or anything. Everybody had an equal say in the vote on Brexit, so therefore it is the greatest barometer we've ever had on public opinion. And the thing about Brexit was it wasn't really about in or out of the European Union. It was, does the system work for you or does it not work for you? And that is the real divide. It's not kind of identity or any of these issues. Is, do you feel that the country is on your side and working in your benefit, or do you feel that it is not on your side? So this is why on every marker you get these kind of wild differences. It's because the question is really that.
Yeah.
So you could be part of one group, but even that group is then divided by that question.
But then, of course, there are some subjects that are new. Gender is relatively new in the grander scale of things. I've made this point so many times. In 25 years or whatever it is, you know, for a young buck, you wouldn't have thought I've been doing it this long, but 25 odd years, maybe more, of doing this job, I can honestly say up until 3 years ago, I never once can recall discussing trans issues or never once. Never came up. Nadia won Big Brother, for God's sake. Nobody blinked. Faye Presto was doing magic in the Ivy. Nobody blinked. All manner of people were on the scene. Nobody blinked. And then suddenly, bang, out of nowhere.
Well, that's because the people who became indoctrinated at university into the woke kind of way of thinking became the people running the institutions. So basically, that group who graduated probably in the early 80s now are the people running places like the BBC, the running of the civil service. They are the people in charge. That's why when they took on that ideology, they now spread it into the country through our institutions, through the media, through the law, through the politics, and that is why you're all now talking about it.
So it was bubbling away, waiting to happen, and then there was this explosion which kind of chimed a little bit afterwards, but chimed with the kind of Brexit thing. Flags is interesting to me, because we played that clip of a guy saying, you know, as a black man, that, you know, when he was a kid and whatever, the flag had, you know, horrendous National Front symbols, and I can't take away his experience. That's what he feels. However, that kind of went away a bit, didn't it? The flag that we all realised, we'd all grown up, the National Front had kind of disappeared. I know the EDL knocked around later, but that had gone as well, and we can sort of reclaim the flag without having to worry about these silly conversations. And now that's come back.
Yeah, that's because the 2008 financial crisis happened. We have yet to recover from that. So therefore, what the flag is actually a conversation. It's about your feeling of belonging and stability. Because we have economic instability, people feel like the world is shaking underneath their feet, so they need to hold on to something. So usually holding on to kind of symbols of stability, which the flag is, the royal family, things like that. Once they start to wobble, the country wobbles with it. And that's why we talk about identity so much. Is actually the real conversation is economic instability and the fact that we have yet to recover from the 2008 crisis. And that's what it is.
That's interesting. So the flag became our kind of sort of anchor.
Yeah, it's a way to kind of voice that fear. Because a lot of this is driven out of fear, whether you're in favour of something or you're against it. What your motivation is, realistically, is to cling on to something that you know and something that you understand. Once that is taken away from you, you then start to take it very personally because it's an attack on your stability. That's why we seem to be at each other's throats all the time on these issues. It is actually you're trying to hold on to steady footing.
What seems to have changed, though, it isn't just the fact that, you know, we've got lots of division and lots of subjects, and one of the reasons why it is amplified is, you know, social media and the. But what has kind of changed is the level of anger. I think, you know, I've been in many pub debates where you sat there, you know, arguing with Alf over in the corner, or that kind of skinny socialist sitting there, sort of claiming that the world will be better if Karl Marx was running the show. All of that stuff. But I never remember this level of, you know, we can have a guest on, and whether they're left wing or right wing, whatever, and those that are on the opposing side. I mean, you've just got to go straight to Twitter, which is never, it's not exactly the Oracle of Delphi.
It's not an advisable thing to do.
It's not an advisable thing to do. In any other world, they just go, we've got to ban this, really, just because it's mad. And you look at it, and somebody doesn't say, you know, with respect, I disagree with the professor. It's, this professor, he's an effing, and then they drop the C-bomb, they call him a paedophile. It's like, whoa. He's just got a different opinion
and that's the
on
point.
COVID or something.
It's personal. They've made it personal.
Unbelievable.
Our politics is now entirely personal because we live in silo existence. In other words, everything is tailored for us. Our TV choices, movies, our entire timelines, everything is single service, as we call it. So basically, we don't have a shared experience of the nation anymore. We don't watch TV together. We don't do anything as a nation, realistically. So therefore, we're more apart. And that only breeds distrust. The reality is we go at each other in that way because we don't trust the other person is telling the truth. We don't trust. Until we start to trust, that level of anger is only going to ratchet up. And unfortunately, because we've become more personalised, more kind of on demand, that trust is getting further and further apart.
So there's all of these little facets to it. I mean, the interesting thing about the TV thing, you know, once upon a time, people went to work and said, did you see Only Fools and Horses last night?
We don't have the water cooler
everyone
moment.
talked about that. The water cooler. Everyone talked about, you know, Del Boy falling in the bar and all that kind of stuff. But now, of course, people will watch it at different times.
Yes.
You know, you don't wait for... I remember when 24, the started.
The following day, events take place on the...
Exactly,
I used to love that show.
Sunday night, BBC Two, about 9 o'clock, I think. And you had to wait each week for it to come on board. And I remember thinking, I cannot wait for a Sunday to arrive to watch this. That's all gone, of course, because you can now binge the whole thing in one go. There's no sort of, in that sense... a kind of collective vibe.
I think the last time we had it is probably things like the Olympics. Do you know, where people actually sit and you watch the opening ceremony together, things that we don't have things like that. And because we don't have the moment as a nation, we don't believe that somebody else is living the same existence as us. And because of that, it just breeds an innate distrust. And I think, obviously, because the issues have been so divisive in terms of things like COVID or Brexit, and like I said, those kind of personal identity issues, it's very difficult to believe that somebody doesn't want you to not exist if they have a different opinion to you. I think that's the one thing that we have to get out of it, is that by not talking about something, it doesn't mean we don't care. You don't need constant validation all the time. That has to stop. But again, this is an entire kind of cultural shift that we have to have.
I also wonder, maybe it's also quite simple in the sense that there's a lot of... there's a lot of, anger isn't actually an emotion in itself. It's a manifestation of emotions, and where, people have got a lot of issues around. It's an expensive place to live. There's insecurity. It's a very odd place where it feels like we're going through a bit of a phase, and I mean a sort of 20-year phase, 25-year phase maybe. And that kind of emotion has to manifest somehow. So maybe it's through things like this.
I do think also a big one is that we feel that we've been lied to quite a lot of the time. We're always told half of the truth, or whatever we've been told isn't actually what has happened. And I think the more that has happened, particularly when institutions have done it, things like Parliament or the courts, or when it comes to kind of the police not telling us certain information because they don't trust us, that distrust has only led to more distrust in those institutions. So I've always said that the people who are wanting to kind of save the institutions are the people that have brought them down, because you're not telling the public the truth, because you don't think they can handle it.
Yeah.
And because we don't like to be infantilized, it's just a kind of like a doom spiral that we're stuck on. And it'll only stop when somebody says, you know, this is the truth, and they genuinely mean it from a powerful institution.
Indeed, and of course there is a sense that, you know, some people believe that politically, if you vote in a different party, obviously Reform doing really well, Nigel Farage is going to sort all of this out and everything will be fantastic. It wasn't that long ago that people had that view of Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember if I said anything negative about Boris Johnson, people, you know, in that way,
yeah.
you know, in that way that people, if you people pounce on you, if you say something about Donald Trump, which is a bit weird because he's not our leader.
Yeah.
But people kind of have owned Trump as if he's a member of their family, and the minute you say anything, you're accused of, what's that daft phrase?
Yeah.
Trump derangement
Trump
syndrome.
derangement syndrome,
Because you might not like it.
Yeah, I call it orange man bad mentality, because it does exist. And I think what has happened is we've split ourselves into two groups. The dichotomy.
Yeah.
We don't live in a dichotomous world. We live very much in the grey, where people could be right on this, wrong on this. We don't ever accept that you can hold two different opinions and be in two different groups, but you might still support the third thing that you also support. We don't understand that people are complex, so therefore everything seems to be at each other's throats.
So there is the question. Why is Britain more divided than ever? 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on that? You can drop us a voice note there as well. 87222 if you're messaging. More stories to come. Peter Barnes is with us. We will talk about it. What a question. Who's right, the US or Iran? I mean, it's bizarre we would even be in that place, but we certainly are. And Labour rebranding Starmer as a global statesman as they scramble for vote. That's quite funny, isn't it? We'll have more on that and some other great stories on the way. 1:20. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So 4 in 5 British adults now perceive the nation as divided. What is behind that division? Culture wars, gender, flags, Brexit, you name it. How do you pinpoint that? Put your finger on it as to why we are still there. 0344 499 1000. Peter Barnes is with us. A few more stories still to come as well. And of course we should mention Donald Trump's insistence that the truce with Iran remains in effect. Iran has accused the US of violating the ceasefire. This comes as fresh explosions hit America's Arab allies, and Tehran declares the Strait of Hormuz is closed. But hold on, hang on, didn't Keir Starmer also say we'd helped the ceasefire?
Well, we've just reached this ceasefire, which is both welcome, and I think there'll be a sense of real relief. There certainly is across the region and for the United Kingdom. But there's work to do, and I'm here in Saudi Arabia and neighbouring countries now to carry out that work in support of what we're all seeking, which is that this ceasefire should be not a temporary ceasefire, but a permanent ceasefire.
If you're watching that visually, it looks more like he's at the races.
Yes. I thought the same thing.
Yes.
Literally thought, I was like, oh, that looks nice.
He's about to put a tenner on the 240 at Chepstow. Yeah. We have reached a ceasefire, he said. Well, Keir Starmer. I asked the question yesterday, is Keir Starmer going to solve the problem? Well, he's kind of claiming he has. We've reached a ceasefire.
Yeah, I find it funny that he's made it to the Gulf before HMS Dragon, but I find that quite hilarious.
That's true.
Yeah, but the reality is there isn't a ceasefire. Everyone's, again, we're having the wrong argument. A ceasefire just has to have a kind of, it has to be published, it has to have scope, defined terms, all of this stuff. There isn't any of that. Yeah. This is more of just an agreement between people not to do a certain thing. That is not a ceasefire. So therefore saying one side has breached it and one side has breached it for this reason is a nonsense argument. And this is all just kind of, yet again, playing the war out in a different way.
Yes.
So we have to ask this question, is it US or is it Iran that is saying whatever? It is literally, again, the continuation of the battle, just not on the front lines. It is very important to remember that also that the Israel operation is different than what the US wanted. There's no kind of linked up, kind of realistic, kind of agreed goal between the two of them. So again, does the ceasefire agree to one or does it agree to the other? And that is the entire problem. As we're saying that we've got some kind of truce or peace or whatever is nonsense because nobody's actually agreed to anything. And on the Straits, if I hear one more person say the Straits are closed, that's just not true either, because I think as of yesterday, I think 17 or 18 ships have gone through it. The point is, the Straits are open, but it's all about whether they have the insurance and the trust of the kind of mechanics around the Straits to actually bypass it, to actually go through it. So
they're kind of open, but the spirit of open is somewhat.
That's actually what defines the oil markets. It's what defines everything. It's whether the ships can get from A to B on time, unimpeded. And if they don't believe that is possible, that's why people say the Straits are closed. It's not the physical bit of it. But what's very, very interesting is that the French, along with Bahrain, are organising a 35-country alternative route. In other words, they will kind of bypass the Straits and kind of go a different way. That is what is going to happen next.
Okay.
So this is the thing. It's because Iran can't afford the Straits to be closed either. They lose $237 million a day. They're a heavily indebted country. Just basically had its entire army and apparatus depleted, if not destroyed. So again, it's a lot more complex than a lot of people are saying, but for the idea that Keir Starmer, we've done something, we can't even tie our shoelaces, so...
It's a lot of old colours, isn't it?
It's insulting.
It is. I did hear Pete Hegseth, though, Secretary of State for War, which is a ridiculous title. Yesterday, he kind of went beyond Trump, and he said, this was an absolute classic war. This was, everything. Our fighting forces we went in, did the job, came out like it was a clean-cut, clear, unequivocal conclusion, and this is anything but. Yeah, from a military perspective, Pete Hegseth is 100% correct. From a political one, he's 100% incorrect. So the military side of things, it was one of the most precise, kind of precision-based actions America has done in a very long time. Probably better than Venezuela, realistically. I mean, the missile depletion, the eradication of the nuclear program, they got rid of the Ayatollah. Every single marker was hit, undeniably. The problem is, politically, it's not the same thing. No. So this is... Well, the regime is still there.
Well, you know, he's half there apparently. So there.
Well,
you know.
I said it yesterday. He's governing by instalments.
Yeah, but this,
or dying by instalments.
Dying by instalments. But this is also, I think, a really, really important point is that you can't get rid of the regime because we've done that before, and that is how countries descend.
Correct.
So I actually think this idea of what he means by regime change is more of a kind of outlook and not necessarily personnel, because you've still got some group to run the country, particularly where it is in the world and the kind of situation that it finds itself in. It has to stabilise, and you can't stabilise if you keep killing the leadership. You have to stabilise the leadership, and I think that is what Trump is trying to do now. Is that because it's the only way you can actually have any kind of ceasefire or deal on the table. Is you've got to be able to deal with the person opposite, and if you keep killing them, it's not going to work.
Can we move to this story, the Ed Miliband story? This is despite local kind of Chernobyl comparisons. Ed Miliband has approved the UK's largest solar farm, 800 megawatts Springwell solar farm in Lincolnshire, which the government announced on Wednesday could power around about £180,000 homes annually. Here's Ed.
The truth is, our country remains in the grip of fossil fuel markets controlled by petrostates and dictators. That's why our energy bills are so high. There is an answer: clean, homegrown power that we control. But to bring it to people's homes, we need to build the transmission infrastructure to make that happen.
Nonsense. It's the only way to describe it.
I mean, it's a great answer, isn't it? We listen to Ed Miliband, there's a moment where you kind of have to... You're a bit shell-shocked.
I'm like, is it April 1st still?
Here he is, he's still saying it. Here's my question, though, OK? And I don't know the answer to this. They say this... I mean, by the way, this thing in Lincolnshire is absolutely bloody huge. Yeah. It's massive. They say it will power, or could power, 180,000 homes. Now, if that is the case, many people will go, well, what's not to like?
Yeah, the problem is the word could.
Yeah.
We don't even know if the technology is strong enough.
And also, I would also argue 180,000 in a population of, what, 70 million?
Well, you know, there'll be no of, you know, and also we live in a world in which increasing energy supply is not only necessary, it is essential. You know, if we want to have the kind of AI hubs and the data centres which the government has said they wanted, you were going to need to cover at least 2/3 of the nation in solar panels, minimum. Yeah. I mean, the idea that this is going to make an absolute difference, we're not in the grip of petrostate nations, we're in the grip of Ed Miliband. He is the person that's keeping our energy bills in an absolute astronomical high price range, because he has not understood that you need to diversify. You can't just jump onto the renewables bandwagon like it's, you know, the solution to everything. You have to do it incrementally, and more importantly, you have to improve the infrastructure as you're doing it. So yes, we can have all the solar farms we like, but when we have to pay people to turn the things off, it's not working. We have to be honest about the capabilities that we have, and then put forward a plan to get to the bit that you want to do. This is Ed's just running ahead because he's so kind of one-tracked mind with it. It's kind of evangelical-like. Yes. It's very concerning. But I will say the reality of what we should doing is what Google's doing, and they're putting up this satellite to have all these solar farms in space. This is one of the reasons why we've gone with Artemis 2 exists. One of the reasons we needed Greenland and all this kind of stuff. It's because space is the next kind of layer to which we solve a lot of the world's problems. Because if you put the solar panels in space, you don't need to worry about what land they're taking up. You don't have to worry about there being an ice or anything like that. You literally just have them in outer space.
Indeed. Just a couple of quick messages to finish on. Bill in Romsey says... sorry, I'll come to Bill's in a second. One here says, it's Brexit that broke Britain. Election results are relatively short-term, but Brexit was permanent, and it broke losers' consent. And without that, democracies can't function. And one here from Greg in Sheffield, who says, Ian Collins is the peak of the modern British man.
Oh, right. I don't take that personally, what I'm saying here, but never mind.
Yes, it came from this other phone down
I was going to say, who's sending those in for you?
Do you know, we used to have, this is absolutely true, how times change, and there was no pejorative in this. We used to have a jingle that said, I'm not kidding you, Ian Collins, hero to the hetero, icon to the homo. And that's what it said.
I could see you being a gay icon.
Nobody would make that now, would they? No, because they would think it's even though actually it's not. There's nothing bad in it.
Yeah. But it
would sound like, as if you were being bad. But I'd like to think I retain both of those.
You have it saved on that laptop, don't you? Just ready to go.
It's my screensaver.
Yeah. Just when you're having a bad day.
Just take a look at that.
Yeah, whenever Ed Miliband comes on, that's what you look at.
Every day of the week. Peter, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Peter Barnes with us here on Talk 0344 499 1000. And that question, why is Britain more divided than ever? You might also want to jump in there with Keir Starmer's new statesman, global statesman role, self-appointed it seems. And what is going on in Lincolnshire? If you live in that neck of the woods, is that solar farm about to open near you? Your thoughts. Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Just gone 1:30. 0344 499 1000. Why is Britain more divided than ever? It's a reasonable question. One I think we're only right to ask. Let's firstly get a word from Anne Widdecombe. Anne, of course, is former MP, former MEP as well. Anne, we forget about your MEP status. I know it was only half an hour, Anne, but of course it was significant.
I think it was about a quarter of an hour.
And of course, I was there with you on the very last day in Brussels. We had a glass of wine down there in the bar.
Indeed, we celebrated what we called Brexodus.
Absolute Brexodus, yeah, indeed. And everybody...
We had, if you remember, we had a Highland Piper and everything.
Absolutely right. Everybody legged it for the hills after that. But what has happened since then? Because this report today, Anne, says that, you know, we're more divided than ever, and almost suggesting that Brexit was a kind of a starting point, and now it's morphed into gender wars, issues about flags, levelling up, the red wall. Everybody's confused. Everyone's divided. What is happening?
Yes, I think it was very different. I mean, Brexit was a very serious divide. In fact, I described it at the time as being like an unarmed civil war. Families were divided, friends gave up their friendships. It was a very, very divisive time, but it was settled, and it should have been settled properly and wasn't. But I don't think what we're going through now is like that, because with Brexit, you were either in favour of it or you were against it. But now we've got a myriad of issues going on, as you rightly just pointed out. You know, you've got transgender issues, you've got pro-Palestinians, anti-Semitism, you've got a very fractured society.
Yeah.
And I think what is happening is, and you can see this in the rise of reform and of the Greens, is that the old order is dying. People used to think, well, if you had a government that was making an unholy mess, it didn't matter, because the opposition would come along and take over and put things right. And now people had 14 years of Tory mess, and now they've been very, very disappointed with Labour, and they've had a couple of years of Labour mess, and they're saying, let's try something different. And I think that is how you can explain the rise of reform, which is offering common sense, the rise of the Greens, which is offering bluntly pseudo-communism.
Yes, yeah.
But you've got a difference there.
Well, I wouldn't argue with anything you've just said there, but I can imagine many people might, and it could be said, you could construct a fairly intelligent argument, I would imagine, Anne, that would suggest this divide could get greater under a reform government.
I don't think it would get greater, because you would have had a decision and then you would have had a direction. And I think people feel that both governments of the last couple of decades have been decidedly directionless. It hasn't been quite clear which way the ship was pointed, and with a differing number of hands on the tiller and endless speculation about changing that. I think people have felt directionless. I think when you have a reform government, just as you did when you had a Thatcher government, you'll have a sense of direction. Now, you may or may not agree with that sense of direction, but you will have it, and things will happen and things will be done, and things that stand in the way, like the Human Rights Act, will be got rid of. And I think that will make a very big difference. I don't think it will get worse, but it may get worse in the run-up to the next election before it gets any better.
Why have people become so entrenched, though, in their views? I mean, some really basic stuff, previously, and maybe I've got some rose-tinted glasses on this, Anne, but that sense that you could have a robust and sometimes uncomfortable conversation or a debate with a political opponent, whether it was sitting in the pub, whether it was on air like this. You will know it from your many years in the House of Commons, people that you could have a proper row across the chamber and then sit and have a cup of tea afterwards. Indeed. And it feels that what's happening now. I mean, there'll be people listening to this, they'll remember you being, in government, and they'll remember your role at the Home Office, they'll remember your role with Brexit, they'll remember all of the things, and somebody somewhere will write the most horrendous thing that they would never say to your face in a million years, but they'll stick it and commit it to social media or post it somewhere. How did we get to that stage?
Well, I think you've said the two vital words in your last sentence, which is social media, which has proved extremely polarising. Now, yes, we all got nasty letters when we were MPs, but quite regularly with social media, it is this person is a non-person because they have views that the person who is writing it doesn't find acceptable.
Yeah.
And the view now is growing up, look, I strongly disagree with you, but you've got every right to say that. The view that is now growing up, and indeed has grown up, is I so strongly disagree with you that you've got no right to say that. That's the difference.
Yeah. Spot on. Anne, lovely to see you again. Thank you for coming on with us. Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister, Reform UK Justice spokeswoman and former MEP herself. Let's go to work with Liam Deacon, comms consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. So you know all about how this feels, Liam, this divide, the kind of things people will call you. They won't go, oh, you're that man that disagrees with me. They'll doubt your parentage. They'll doubt, your mere existence. The kind of jip and hassle that will get thrown in your direction. When I say your, I mean people with your views, are immense. Brexit started it, but now we're on to all sorts of other territory where that same divisive feeling remains.
Yeah, I mean, I should start by saying Anne Widdecombe also played a key role in the 2019 general election. I think she was one of our candidates and was giving us a lot of wisdom and guidance behind the scenes. Great to hear her speaking. But yeah, no, you're quite right. This is a really important bit of research by the Telegraph. I think the headline finding, just 3% of voters now disagree with the statement that I believe politics is broken and no one knows how to fix Britain. This comes at a time where Keir Starmer keeps saying things like Nigel Farage is talking down Britain. He's being too negative. He's talking down Britain, implying that, all Reform supporters are just imagining this. One of the key divides between the Tories and Reform right now is, there's some Tories that I really respect, but they say, Britain isn't broken. There's just problems with it. So, and I just think that is fundamentally wrong. Like, we're not imagining this. It's not some cultural invention. People are really feeling this. A really good example of it is when that debate happened around barbershops. It was something that had been spoken about in the comment sections. People saw it on their high streets. These dodgy, strange shops with neon lights and lots of cash flowing through them that were doing really well whilst legitimate hardworking businesses were failing, and something was wrong and no one was talking about it. And it was Richard Tice that sort of snapped his fingers and said, no, we're going to talk about this. It's not imagined. And now, lo and behold, a year later, the National Crime Agency are looking into it. Keir Starmer's looking into it. And so it's not a myth. And it's great that the Telegraph have finally done the polling. And there is this almost universal sense now that something is broken in Britain and something is divided. Yeah. And you have to ask how we got here.
Do you think, though, Liam, that Brexit, to a degree at least, was predicated, or the kind of question fed into a feeling as distinct from a genuine intellectual dive into the pros and cons of Europe. A friend of mine who was very much a Remainer said afterwards, you know, he said, I keep meeting people from France and Germany and Spain. He said, they're insulted that we've left. And I said to him, I said, how can you, we left a trading bloc. How can you get insulted by it? You might disagree with it. How can you get insulted by it? It's not personal. It's not about individuals. It's not like we hate the French, or we have a bit of a funny relationship with the French, but it's nothing to do with that. You know, Brexiteers don't dislike Europe or European countries or the people in them. That was never part of the debate, but it sort of turned into that for some people.
And it was a deliberate move by the opponents of Brexit to frame it in those terms. So a lot of people that believed in Brexit wanted just to reclaim a bit of power over their lives. They saw that key policy areas such as immigration and regulation had been turned over to Europe. And it suited the opponents of Brexit to say, no, you're not making a legitimate technical argument. You're driven by hate. And we saw a lot of people on the anti-Brexit side turn the debate in those terms because they thought it was advantageous. And that set off quite a toxic debate. And I don't think it was the fault of Brexiteers. So they weren't perfect. It was bad actors on both sides. But I think it was primarily on the other side. And you had Project Fear as well. And then you also have to critically look at what happened after Brexit. So Brexit wasn't just about Europe. It was about bringing powers closer to home. And that was to do with the whole post-Blair settlement, where key powers to do with justice, policing, everything had been turned over to Quangos, and when people voted, nothing changed. And what did they do after Brexit? Okay, two of the primary reasons for voting Brexit were to bring down immigration and to get rid of European regulations. And we quadrupled immigration, and we have ended up with more regulation. So we did nothing with Brexit. And then I think a key thing happened after that, where you had the Great Awakening. So in 2015, there was this cultural moment. It started with Black Lives Matter and BLM, which came over from America. And you had this toxic fake intellectual sort of culture pouring out of universities. BLM, you had Stop Asian Hate, you had Trans Rights Now, you had DEI, you had HR offices, you know, in every office and every school. And you had this great moment of the left flexing their cultural power. And lots of people felt censored, even though all these things were going wrong. They felt like they couldn't speak. And then I think something snapped across the nation. I think part of it was to do with Boris Johnson coming in, saying he was going to fix it and doing the opposite. And part of it, actually, I think, was a lot to do with Twitter, that suddenly you had a social media website where people could finally speak their mind. And people started doing it. And that had a huge rippling effect outwards. And a lot of these sort of empty platitudes that we'd sort of lived off for years, diversity is our strength. We're going to have a green industrial revolution. You know, that great paradox. We're going to shut down our industries, but it was a new revolution. That gender is just a construct, and that the NHS is always good. And if you give it money, it will just get better, even though it got worse, even though when we gave it more money. All these platitudes that we lived have started to fall apart. And it really, you've reached this point now where people are actually kicking back, and they're slaying a lot of sacred cows. And we're looking across the nation and think nothing has changed, and things are getting worse. And that's what you're seeing in this polling. There is this moment of desperation. And it is something that the two major parties have been utterly unable to address, as Anne rightly points out. The Spectator wrote a really sort of era-defining piece about this a little while ago, and this research in the Telegraph just backs it up. It was called Scuzz Nation, and they were speaking about just small things, about how there's 100 car breakings in London and only one charge is made, and fly tipping is up 50%, and these small things that creep into people's lives, and they make things worse. And one of the biggest things out of all of it is immigration. That there was a really interesting take on immigration in this polling, because it showed that, yes, 51% of voters no longer recognize their country, but actually the majority of the public do embrace diversity. And I think that speaks to actually the complex nature of this question, that most Brits aren't sort of anti-foreign people. They don't hate other cultures, other foods, other ways of life, other clothing. But there is this deep sense of feeling that so many people have come into our country and haven't been asked or haven't bothered to integrate into British culture. And that's not cognitive dissonance. You can be perfectly uncomfortable with the scale of it, but not be...
Yeah, you can absolutely wear both hats on that. Listen, Liam, I've got to cut in there. Brilliant stuff from you. Thank you, as ever. Liam Deacon, communication consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. Let's speak to Peter Wilding, author of What Next? Britain's Future on Europe. And I say this every time we speak, Peter, the man who literally coined the word Brexit. Good to have you on with us. I would imagine you disagree with quite a lot of what you've heard our previous two speakers say. But the wider question here is, why is Britain more divided than ever? Is it just about Brexit? Is something else going on?
Hi, Ian. Good to see you. You'll be surprised that I actually don't disagree with very much of what Liam said.
Okay.
Not least because since we last spoke, I've launched something called the League of Nations, which basically enables everybody to see how their countries are doing by like they were football teams. And we do that by absorbing all the information from the United Nations, etc., that you and I pay for. And this is why I agree with Liam. The truth is, the country is more divided for three reasons. One, the people went through the Brexit madness and found that Brexit was a nothing burger in the end. Instead of taking back control, they feel they've lost control. There's more immigration, more red tape, more economic decline. So they're naturally feeling a sense of what was it all for? But the curious thing is Britain is still the second happiest country in Europe. So we can moan, but we're still getting on with it. But they're upset because youth unemployment is higher, the NEETs are higher, refugees are higher, and government effectiveness is the key to this.
So do you sense then, I mean, Liam just mentioned lots of other areas from HRDI, all manner of protests and everything, which kind of, either by coincidence or by design, I don't know, sort of around about the same time also came to the forefront. So we had this sort of perfect storm, as it were, of discombobulation.
And he's right to an extent, not deliberate, but the almost natural consequence of a style of government being taken too far. So why are the people disgruntled? Why do they feel more divided? Because the state, which had, we were all sold this fact that the state has been strangled by European bureaucracy and it can't do what we want it to do. We must take control of it. But in the last 10 years, Ian, on all the indices that I mentioned earlier on, the state is the one thing that has declined precipitously. We have gone from first, the Rolls-Royce civil service, we're behind the European Union average, France, Germany, even Italy now. Government effectiveness down, Ian. Rule of law down. Strength of institutions down. Democracy index down. And what's up? Well, inequality, more refugees. And so no wonder the people are feeling this way. My final and third point in this triptych of horror is clearly the economy would have been the driving force post-Brexit to deliver the revenue, to deliver the Brexit that people wanted. And we tried all three of them in. We tried Theresa May's Brexit, which was a managerial Brexit, stop the damage, let's just go through, get out of the European Union, stay more or less in the single market and customs union. Ditched, she resigned. Boris Johnson's Brexit, nationalist, levelling up, failed. And then finally, the Liz Truss experiment, which is just, let's just let loose on the Brexit that sector of the Tory party wanted, failed. So when you try all three Brexits, Ian, it's little wonder that the state that was supposed to be empowered is weakened and the people who were supposed to be liberated feel let down.
A profound point to finish on, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to see you again. Peter Wilding, author of What Next? Britain's Future on Europe, and the man who coined the word Brexit. I'll say it again. You heard what he said. They were let down by Brexit and then other things, other anger, other avenues of jip and hassle and things we're uncomfortable with or annoyed about, coinciding with a state that doesn't seem to be in control, bureaucracy flying, the list goes on. Why is Britain more divided than ever? It's a cracking question with some great calls and comments coming in from you. We'll come to those next on Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one comes in from Sarah, who says, Starmer the Global Statesman said no one ever. As our new unofficial national anthem, Keir Starmer is a... was sang across the country every day. What planet are these people on? Absolutely good. Cracking point. Thank you, Sarah. Ian says, all the things that you've described as dividing the country are as a result of there being too much food. We don't... That's an interesting one already. We don't have real problems anymore, so people have to make them up. Everyone had to struggle to survive. None of these things, if everyone did, none of these things would matter. It's a very good point, actually. If you were in the middle of a famine, I don't think we'd be talking about flags, would we? I'm not sure that is the full answer, but I like it. Ian, thank you very much indeed. On this divided, what is it? Why is Britain more divided than ever? Is it just simple, bit of Brexit, bit of social media, everyone's got the spotlight, everyone's got a microphone, people are angry and they're allowed to show it? Is it that? Were we always bloody angry as Homo sapiens? Let's get a voice note on this very point from Sean.
A lot of the division comes down to government policy and governments and our institutions in general, like the benefits. I go to work, my next door neighbour don't. They get free stuff, I struggle. Net zero. Rich people can afford the gas bills and the taxes. Normal people really cannot. The country's just a mess. It really is. There's literally division everywhere you go, and I've never seen it like this before.
It's a great point. And arguably, again, sometimes Occam's razor, you know, it is the simplest of answers. You don't need a degree in some kind of social studies course to be able to ascertain precisely the problem. Sean just nailed it. Certainly for him, I think he probably speaks for quite a lot of people. Why are we more divided? What's behind it? 0344 499 1000. Matt is in Cheshire. How are you doing, Matt?
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
Have you had a good Easter?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Fire away.
I've wrote down what I think has happened since Brexit in sort of a summary, if you like. And my words are not to exaggerate, but to accentuate the reality of what has happened. Mm-hmm. I'm extremely glad Britain is divided. Brexit was the catalyst that exposed the traitors and those immigrants that do not belong in Britain and their enablers, and the tyranny of parties who defy the wishes of the mass majority. You don't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, and those eggs are now being broken. Although Brexit was never truly honoured or respected, we are now nearer to what we want. That's why Labour are slimily trying to undo it, and the Conservatives are pretending they didn't betray us. Without Brexit, there is no reform, no Rupert Lowe, no Unite the Kingdom, no Raise the Colours, and no exposure of the unforgivable, scummy treachery of Labour and the purposeful, traitorous immigration tsunami of the Conservatives. If we do not end them both forever, it will never be complete, and you will never, ever get what you want on immigration, on sovereignty, or on the way we treat our people or see ourselves.
Do you think this is ever going to change now, Matt? Because I look at this and I look at all the questions that have been raised and all the points, and whether we're speaking to Anne Widdecombe or Liam or the voice note we just played from Sean. And I'm thinking, are we sort of in in the middle of, are we on manoeuvres, in the middle of a kind of sort of social battle that at some point is just going to iron itself out, and all these crazy initiatives and weirdness and bizarre protests and people walking around claiming that their identity is more important than life itself, all of this, is it just going to go away at some point?
I think when Labour leave office, things will calm down a little bit. I think if we start to deport people when the next government comes in, because we know it's not going to be Labour, there are Labour Brexiteers now who continue to support Labour after they voted Remain, who will now never vote Labour again.
Yeah.
So there is literally a
But are people? But that's the bit that really fascinates me. So I totally get why Nigel Farage and Reform are riding high in the polls. The area where I've got a question mark, and I think lots of other people do, is the problems that people want solving. Yes, of course, you know, transportation, education, NHS, all of that stuff. But I think there's a feeling that all the nonsense we've been talking about, we want to get rid of that and move forward like adults. I'm not sure that's going to change because of a Reform government or any other government for that matter. I can't imagine it's... In fact, there are reasonable arguments, as I mentioned to our guest Liam before, or Anne Widdecombe, I think I mentioned it too, that they could actually get worse.
I mean, if that's the case, then Rupert Lowe will be the next Prime Minister after Nigel Farage, won't he? Because we cannot...
Would it get worse again?
We can't continue to be betrayed, Ian. If people vote for something, if you lend me a tenner and I never give it you back, and then I ask you to lend me a tenner and I never give it you back, at some point you've got to click and say, I'm not lending this guy any more money.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd do it twice to you, Matt. You get 2 goes, and then I'd come round and give you a good hiding. It's as simple as that.
I would just give it you back, Ian.
I bet you would as well. Listen, great call, Matt. Thank you very much indeed. I'd lend Matt 20 quid any day of the week. Great call from him. More to come, 0344 499 1000. What's with the divide thing? Will a new government solve all of this? I'm not sure. They might solve the fundamentals. The NHS, they might get to grips with the net zero madness. But all of this other stuff, I don't know. 0344 499 1000. More on that from you. Why is Britain more divided than ever? Right now it's 2 o'clock. Let's get the news.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of Common Sense. So much to get through. We're talking about that new report revealing how the vast majority of the electorate consider Britain more fractured than it was during the Brexit referendum. This tense or sense of tension and great division is shared by the majority of all social groups, with the country perceived as split along the lines of identity, age, geography, and of course political beliefs. Why are we? What is the reason? Why is Britain more divided than ever before? We'll continue to take your calls on that. Also this afternoon, the Strait of Hormuz has been declared shut by Tehran, which is accusing the US of violating their ceasefire agreement. This comes amid fresh explosions targeting some of America's Arab allies. And yet Donald Trump maintains that the truce even is still in effect. What is the truth? And who's telling it? The USA or Iran? And elsewhere, France has turned down a proposition put forward by Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, which suggested deploying British Border Force vessels to intercept small boats and return them to French territory. I mean, the thinking behind that is extraordinary. This is an episode of Roadrunner, isn't it? We keep trying ever more imaginative ways. It was drones, Navy ships. What about... Oh, here's another one. Yes. Why don't we get our guys to go and work it? That's not going to work either, because the French are having none of it. Details to come. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. That's where you can call us or leave a voice note. You can message 87222. So let's go back to what is happening in the Middle East. Despite Donald Trump's insistence that the truce remains in effect, Iran has accused America of violating that ceasefire agreement. It comes, as I mentioned, after fresh explosions have hit many parts of the Middle East, many of those American Arab allies, and Tehran suggesting the strait is closed. But hang on, didn't we hear from another figure in all of this? He is, in fact, the peacemaker general, Keir Starmer. He said that we've helped with the ceasefire. Have a listen.
Well, we've just reached this ceasefire, which is both welcome and I think there'll be a sense of real relief. There certainly is across the region and for the United Kingdom. But there's work to do, and I'm here in Saudi Arabia and neighbouring countries now to carry out that work in support of what we're all seeking, which is that this ceasefire should be not a temporary ceasefire, but a permanent ceasefire.
Let's get a word on this from Tom Klaus Pritchard. He's Foreign Policy, Defence and Senior Communications Advisor. Tom, good to see you, sir. Just on the point, there was us thinking, is Donald Trump going to save it? Hexith, all of these people. Turns out Keir Starmer has solved international peace. All because of our own Prime Minister. I mean, you heard it from his own. We've solved it, he said. We've sorted the ceasefire. Congratulations, Mr. Starmer.
Well, look, quite possibly. So Keir Starmer has... he's handled some things well and he's handled some things not so well.
Yeah.
What I would like to sort of get back to was the original reason for the ceasefire in the first place.
Yes, of course.
The Strait of Hormuz is responsible for the maritime traffic of around a fifth of the world's oil that travels by sea.
So it's significant.
Very, very significant indeed. So the reason for getting a ceasefire was to open the Strait of Hormuz in order to avoid a repeat of the 1973 oil crisis. Yeah. Now, that's extremely important. What's gone on here is, and Iran have declared it closed. There are reports, conflicting reports with that say actually there has been increased traffic coming through. I think Sir Keir Starmer's role in this is not overly significant. I think he could have done a lot more to help our American allies and, for that matter, our Israeli allies.
I'd use the phrase sod all, to be honest. I mean, to put it bluntly, I can't work out what he's done at all.
Well, you might want to say that. I mean, I like to sort of think of myself as quite a serious foreign affairs
you're a very diplomatic man.
Commentator.
But I've struggled to work out when he said, we've solved, we've got the ceasefire. It was that sense that he was sort of part of it, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure he was.
No, not particularly.
We're on the same page after all. So back to what is happening here, because I never thought I'd have to ask the question, who is telling the truth, America or Iran? I mean, it would have been almost a preposterous question, because we know that Iran is this sort of Islamist, medieval, death culty regime, and America is the mother of all Western democracies. It would have been a stupid question to raise. But here we are now, with Iran saying one thing, Donald Trump saying something else. What is the reality of where we're at?
Well, that's always going to be the case. It's just part of the course in international negotiations of one side trying to big themselves up in order to get some sort of deal or some sort of arrangement, some sort of win in negotiations. Iran has been responsible for a whole load of propaganda, lies around the world, and we see that in some of the pro-Palestine protests and so forth. So I'm not about to believe anything that the Iranian government have been spewing. As I said, they have declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, at least for now, but there has been reports, including some of which have been echoed by the White House press secretary, that there has been maritime traffic coming through.
So it's a bit open.
That's very true. That's that's very on the nose.
And this, of course, is it's quite vital to be open for Iran, if no one else. I mean, you know, this is something that Iran rely on. They heavily need it to be open, surely.
Well, it's certainly a card that they can play. Iran have suffered immensely under this war, justifiably so, because they have been threatening Israel with destruction for decades. They've been attacking neighbouring Arab states, Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so forth for many, many years now. So what they got was very much deserved. However, this has been a card that they have been playing, and Arab states, their neighbours, Israel, America, other countries around the world, it's vastly in our interest to get the Strait of Hormuz open. So that's what we've been trying to achieve.
Indeed. In terms of a ceasefire, I mean, there are still explosions. Stuff is going on. It was never a complete Middle East ceasefire anyway, so we know that there were exceptions, to Lebanon being an obvious example.
That's
right. You know, many reports that, you know, this cannot at any level now be called a ceasefire. There will be still people dying and bombs still being dropped. So where does that leave the White House? Where does that leave Trump with the claim that, firstly, the war is won, and secondly, the ceasefire is holding nicely?
I think you really have to get to the nub of the issue of what actually we want to achieve here. I think the desirable outcome here would be fundamental regime change in Iran. That's what many countries in the Middle East want. That's what Israel wants. That's what actually most people in Iran want. They don't want to live under a fundamentalist Islamist regime any longer. They've suffered more than anybody in many cases. So the desire must be for regime change in Iran. The question will be, how do we achieve that? The answer to that is we build a consensus around who will succeed the Ayatollahs.
But that was at the beginning of all of this. America were very much, you know, regime change, get rid of these guys, an uprising, the people will take to the streets, Pahlavi will be back in situ, and all of this business. That's not really panned out in that kind of way. We've currently got the son of the former Ayatollah, albeit a man who apparently is in about 7 different pieces right now, but nonetheless, he's got an administration around him that looks kind of similar to the last one. So has anything really changed?
Well, that's the question. I can't really see that anything significant has changed, apart from, well, look, Iran has been weakened by this. Several of their, a lot of their military infrastructure has been compromised and neutralised, so that's a good thing. But fundamentally, at a sort of government macro level, you know, nothing much has changed, and the desire is that we do change that. The idea that somehow, you know, oh, we're just going to, you know, take out some of the leaders and, you know, the people will take to the streets, that's not a strategy.
Sure.
That is not a plan. That is, oh, we'll bomb loads of stuff and hope for the best. That doesn't work.
Let's move on to what's annoying me quite a lot lately, and you may or may not share this, Tom, but that's the misplaced use of the word NATO. Where were NATO in this? NATO, of course, is a defensive organisation. NATO, as a body, would not pitch up and assist in a war. But individual members might autonomously decide they want to assist America. So when we hear Trump talk about NATO, quite aside from the fact that America is the head honcho of NATO, if you like, so that's quite curious in itself. But member states that didn't take part, many are saying, not unreasonably, well, you know, we weren't even told this was happening, let alone be there ready to and willing to participate.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not in government. I don't have access to those sensitive and secret communications between the White House and Downing Street or anything else. But I believe I would have taken the other position. I would have preferred it if Britain would have allowed America to use our bases and some of our military infrastructure in order to neutralise Iranian targets. Also, what I think is really important, not just for Britain, but also all of the European partners in NATO here, is that this is clearly a conflict which is very important to America. It's very important that we get regime change in Iran. Iran calls the US the big devil. It's very important that we get that, and it's important to America, and we see that it's important to America. Well, what's important to Europe? What's important to Europe is that we get American assistance in Ukraine. And if we want American assistance in Ukraine, or if we want America to continue assisting us in Ukraine, we kind of have to give them some things that they want too. That's just basic diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean, Starmer might say, because despite the fact that we were kind of late to the game, I mean, it wasn't much of a gap, but it was significant enough to cause this division between the White House and Downing Street, reasonably so. But they might say, well, actually, we're now pretty much the only country that's assisting because we are allowing our bases to be used. We're also, as I understand it, sending some sort of intelligence personnel into the sphere as well. So if anyone on the planet outside of the United States are doing their bit on Iran, it is actually us now, albeit a few days later than we should have been. Is that fair, or are we doing naff all?
That's a fair assessment. I think we came a little bit late to the party in many ways. I've heard in conversations I've had with people in Washington, the phrase too little too late has come to mind, very regrettably. I think we should have done more from the beginning, and what we should have done is we should have used our diplomatic leverage in Europe to be able to say to our partners in Europe, hi guys, this is something that's really important. If we want continued American assistance on Ukraine, which is something I've personally worked very hard to achieve as well, we have to kind of give the Americans something too.
The overarching headline here, though, Tom, is that the Middle East has got to look different after this, hasn't it? For this to truly be successful, we've got to change the face of the Middle East. America has got to change the face. Iran being the biggest bogeyman on the patch, as it were, greatest sponsor of terrorism anywhere on planet Earth. That's got to be gone. It's got to become this new kind of, I don't want to talk about Trump casinos, save that for Gaza, but you take the point. It's got to look different. It's got to go back. It's got to be secular. It's got to be rid of the Islamist ideology. I mean, that's not going to happen in a couple of months, is it? I mean, that could be generations.
You're right. This is a multi-year project. The desire would be for regime change in Iran. You're absolutely right, Ian. Whether that involves the prince, whether that involves somebody else, I'm not going to answer that question. That's a question for an Iran expert. But there has to be some kind of regime change in order to get really good long-term results. Yeah, if there's a regime change in Iran, that would be fantastic. I mean, the region is far safer as a result. It would mean Israel and Arab countries equally to this would not be facing threats of their destruction on a daily basis, and it would mean a very, very prosperous potential trade partner for countries in the region and the wider world.
And just a final point, not connected to this, although I suppose to a degree everything is kind of interconnected. We often look at British waters and, vessels and things that shouldn't be in them or on them. We talk about migration across the Channel, but actually there's a new kid on the block, and that's the Russians sending some submarines following some of our vessels that are out there. What's going on here? What's Putin up to?
Well, I mean, this is a very significant development which has happened and broke today. Look, I wouldn't describe Russia as a new kid on the block when it comes to enemies of freedom. They have been enemies of freedom for, well, a hell of a long time now. Yeah. They have been targeting British infrastructure for a hell of a long time. They've been targeting civilian and military infrastructure of our European partners for a hell of a long time. So this isn't really anything new, but it is significant. The Defence Secretary, to his credit, I think made quite a good statement. What I think is crucial now is that we are robust against Russia in whatever form that takes, and I'll leave that to the Defence Secretary to sort of articulate that. But I think it's very important that we are robust against Russia, and we use this as a catalyst, again, to make the case to our American partners and our European partners to say, look, Russia is still incredibly dangerous. Yep. They're coming after us. If we allow them to succeed in Ukraine, we're next.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to, often, once in a while, there'll be a Russian plane that just dips its nose into airspace, almost an act of mischief more than anything. Look what we can do. But with the submarine contingent, this is far more serious. I mean, there's data cables, all sorts of things going on under there. The seabed is a crucial place for the world to tick over, and particularly this country. So if they are monkeying around in a sub under the channel or wherever else, then this is serious stuff.
Absolutely, it's serious stuff, Ian. What they were doing is that they were surveilling an awful lot of civilian, potentially military infrastructure underwater, with a view to taking that information, analysing it, and then making an assessment on what kind of British infrastructure they can attack. So this was very much a sort of a planned operation on the part of the Russians, and as I mentioned, they are looking at what kind of British infrastructure, where can we attack, where are their weaknesses.
Sure. On that point, Tom, good to see you, sir. Thank you. We will speak again, I hope. That is Tom Clowes-Pritchard, Foreign Policy, Defence and Senior Communications Advisor, with us on the programme. Your thoughts on all of that? 0344 499 1000. We'll also come back to the question we started out with about Britain being more divided. A lot of this stuff also feeds into that issue. Are you Team America or Team EU? That old question is in there too. Lines are open, 2:20. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reid, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Andy, who says, Keir Stasi in the Middle East pretending to be the Messiah. A good analogy of him, if you remember playing football at school, and you would always have the goal hanger tapping the ball in from 2 feet, then taking all the glory. That's him to a T, says Andy. I think you're probably bang on. Darryl in Lincoln says, Starmer is a fraud. Once again, everybody else has done the heavy lifting and he's popped up afterwards to grab some spotlight. Surely no one is stupid enough to be fooled by this complete charlatan anymore. Fair point. Kevin says the division didn't start. This is back to our question of why is Britain more divided than ever. Kevin says the division didn't start with Brexit. It started in 2014 with the Scottish independence vote. The division up here was toxic and still is. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And yeah, what really fascinated me, I'm not going to be the first to say this, is the people agitating, mostly SNP supporters, so the Nats that were really agitating for autonomy for Scotland, were simultaneously pro-Remain. So they were you can't be running Scotland from down there in Westminster. Not that Westminster had been running Scotland for years, but that was the central point. What do they know down there in Westminster? What's going on up here in Scotland? But happy to defer to Brussels, which was always just a bizarre position to take. Let's go to Paul in Newport on that division. Paul, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon to you, my friend. Good to speak again. With regard to division, to be honest, I believe very little is to do with Brexit. I genuinely believe this. I actually think, and we've spoken about this before, you know how we've said that, the old days were the good old days?
Yeah.
That used to be the reserve of like the over 75s, you know. And yet now, you could be in your mid-30s and look back to when you were early teens and go, what the hell's happened?
What has gone on?
And so the rate of change is so quick, you're now getting more and more people at a younger and younger age saying, I don't like what it is. Now, if you then split that, if we accept that the rate of change is so quick now and more people are being drawn into it, if you then split that into two and say, OK, there are those that say, well, that's life, I suppose. And they just, and then you get those who say, no, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that people get stabbed in the streets, that I can't go for a drink without someone spiking it, and I'm getting... Right. And so we split that way, I think.
It was interesting that Matt raised, our first caller on this, raised the point of Black Lives Matter, and I thought that was quite pivotal, because, of course, this was all about, you know, look, a man died in America, George Floyd... horrendous, nobody's defending that. I know he was a wrong in himself, but no one wants to see that. I get it, but it kind of immediately highlighted, Paul, the changing world we're in, when an incident, which was not a traffic stop, but a guy's arrested outside a shop in America, and suddenly there are protests on the streets of the UK and around the world, and you think, hang on, what's going on? This is a bit weird. And then you suddenly had people talking about the UK as if this was South Africa in 1978.
I know.
And I just thought, where's this come from? This is really bizarre. We've suddenly almost reignited an argument that we began to solve as much as one could ever solve racism, as it were.
Do you not think the divide actually is that there are those of us, and I'm early 60s, so I'm trying to pull the handbrake on, saying, whoa, slow this down. This is properly getting out of control. It can't be. Like you were, I think the other day we were talking about shop. How can it be that people walk into a shop and just lift it and walk away?
Yeah.
How can that be, right? And so there's people like me, who's an old duffer now, I suppose, compared. We're pulling the handbrake on and going, whoa, slow this down.
Slow it down. So are those things connected? So when I, mentioned Black Lives Matter, and by the way, I was reminded there was an interview, I think it was in the Mail at the time, we tried to get one of the girls, there were two girls gave an interview, two black girls gave an interview at the time saying, we don't go out at night anymore because we don't know if the police are going to kill us. I mean, it was but despite the fact there's not a single documented case of the police killing a black female anywhere, so, but that was what was being said. And then you've just mentioned shoplifting and I don't know, mobile phone theft, law and order. Are these things all connected, is the question?
Well, I think what it is, they are connected, and there is a connection, okay? And here we go. And this is where it becomes really contentious. Because what we've done, not at an increasing pace, I'm going to suggest, is that we've imported things that aren't normal. They're not normal in our society. There are some things that have come over that we've... I mean, I watch Bake Off or the cooking one, and I love to see all this guy lives in London, but he's from Spain, he's got Spanish heritage, and they bring such flavour to our, I don't mean just cooking, but they bring...
such flavour to their beef bolognese.
And then, well, of course, it's not only the good. We've, be it small, it doesn't matter what you talk about, small boats or anything, but some things that I've come across are not good for us. They don't sit well with our national psyche. Where we've gone wrong is we haven't stamped it out. Grooming gangs is an absolute classic, right? That's someone else's culture. In another culture,
I agree.
Fine.
I agree. Well, it's about... I mean, look, the world has evolved. You went back 1,000 years, stuff will probably look very different in terms of culture to how it does now. I understand things evolve, but there is such a thing as a thirst for similar culture, right? So we don't, people say, well, you've got a problem with Eritrean immigration, but you haven't got a problem with Australian immigration. Well, there's a good reason for that. That doesn't mean to say that every Eritrean is a bad person. In fact, I'm minded to say I'm pretty sure most Eritreans are, fairly nice people. But in terms of cultural similarity and synergy and where we're at in the journey of life, I think it is natural that people would see more of a kinship with an Australian or a Spaniard than they would somebody from Eritrea or Sudan.
It is, but where you're spot on. But where we've gone wrong as a society is effectively we've not grabbed these things by the scruff of the neck from the outset and said no, we don't do that here. Yeah. If you remember the old broken window thing? If you say to me, no, we don't have broken windows, right? And then and it goes. And the better part of that is bigger things don't evolve from the broken window. Right?
Yeah.
What we haven't done is we haven't taken some of these practices and blatantly and very overtly said, not here. This is not what we do.
That's exactly it. There's no one... I mean, I keep banging on about this point. I don't see politicians getting angry. I don't see the Home Secretary getting angry. I don't see the Prime Minister getting angry about this stuff. All I hear is when something's happened, Shabana Mahmood or Keir Starmer stand up and they read from a pre-prepared press release and talk about how unacceptable things are. It's all very sort of clipped and clinical. You don't get that raw, visceral anger that you want to hear, which is why Trump does rather well, because he does. I mean, I know he can be a bit of a nut job from time to time, but, he shoots from the hip. He speaks incredibly passionately. And it's a bit of that we want to hear. We want to hear people calling this out. And when we see dysfunctionality, when we see stuff going on in our society, whether it is weird things that people say about protests, whether it is shoplifting or all the other stuff that you've mentioned, Paul, you want to hear a politician stand up and say, this is cobblers. This is absolute bloody nonsense. This is not what we do here.
But this the bizarre thing to me, okay, if you look, I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I'd be kicked out within minutes, I think. But anyway, if you look around it, okay, so the world's a big place, and of all the countries in there is no perfect country. But there are countries that have great ideas on certain things. I spent many, many years in the automotive sector, and they had a thing called benchmarking. And if JCB or Caterpillar or Komatsu, or if they found a really, really good way of doing things,
you copy it.
They'd invite everyone up, say, hey, look, we're doing this. It might be, and so when you look around the world and you say, oh, did you know in Australia, if you apply for asylum and it's rejected, If you then appeal, you've got to appeal from your home country.
Yeah, you can't. You never make it to Australia. You never get to Australia.
You can't.
Yeah, if you've come on a boat.
You don't get here.
Yeah.
And there's other things. It's like, have you ever been to Switzerland?
Maybe, I can't remember. I don't think so.
Oh, it's a lovely place. But then when you drive into Switzerland, so you drive in, you go through the board, and they say, how long are you here for? And you say, well, I'm just driving through on my motorbike. They say, well, that'll be €15 then, and it goes towards the roads, okay? And all the traffic has to pay toll. So if you're in there for 2 weeks, it might be €50 because you're going to go down there and you're going to have to pay that. But the money goes to the road. 100% goes.
So literally to the road, not into some magic pot. Yeah.
No, not some big pot. And so you go there and you say, wow, what brilliant idea. So all these cars coming over on they've got to come across the water.
Yep.
Either by boat or under the... Right, pick up the 15 quid there, right, and put it to the roads. Our roads are terrible. And so I suppose the point to make is, to any politician, look around the world, see what other countries, other nations.
I've questioned this forever. I mean, when if you're West Streeting, wouldn't you go, right, what's the best health service? Oh, Norway, okay, do that. Yeah, that's what you want to happen. Maybe there are good reasons why it doesn't. Paul, I've got to move. You've been brilliant. What a great call. Paul in Newport. Thoughts on that? What has gone wrong? Why are we more divided? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 3, it's chapter 756 of Can We Stop Rubber Boats Floating Across the Channel? France has declined that in itself is an interesting and repetitive headline. France has declined a proposal put forward by this country. Shabana Mahmood sought the deployment of British Border Force vessels to intercept and return small boats to French territory. That was the idea. Will Keir be eating his words?
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal.
I mean, I would never have announced that publicly, frankly. It was always doomed to, at the very, very least, a large dose of criticism. Hasn't really done anything, has it? Let's speak with James Heal, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. It is extraordinary. It's the analogy I keep making here, James, sorry to repeat myself, is that it's an episode of Roadrunner, where they're constantly thinking of imaginative ways how to solve the problem. Oh, here's the next one. You know, here's a good... Yeah, we'll send some people over there. No, that's not work. Put the Navy at... No, that hasn't worked. Some drones in the sky. Never seen them yet. Nothing seems to be working. And this is the latest instalment.
Yeah, much like Roadrunner, I think they're running out of road. I mean, I'm not really sure what the solution is going to be. They're sort of almost hanging in suspense and waiting for reality to kick in. We're now in April. We're about to get through the next 3-4 months of good weather, calm tides and daily crossings. And obviously we've tragically had 4 people believed dead in the Channel today. But obviously this is coming just before the deal with France runs out, the 2023 deal of the past 3 years, giving them 475 million. And frankly, it seems that the government is willing to sort of give anything in the bid to stop the boats, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, Ian.
This particular idea of sending the British border force out there, I feel I've heard it before. That may just be the way this bizarre story works, that everything seems to have been thrown at this and nothing so far has worked. Do we know a specific reason why the French didn't like this?
Well, I think the French have always been very jumpy about foreign troops, as they would say, or foreign officials on their soil. But also they argued that it's the interception that's the key thing, and obviously we were depending on the French officials to intercept them, and that the constant evolution of the smugglers' tactics, for instance, having pre-agreed points where they pick up and drop off people in these boats, is what makes it so difficult. But the reality is the French are never going to care as much about this as Britain. They obviously are disincentivized to care about boats leaving them, as we are. They are coming into Dover, etc. And I think that it's going to remain an intractable problem for a long time, and I suspect Reform UK will be the beneficiaries of it.
Yeah, and as this is all happening, we're hearing more stories of the French police standing by as migrants jump into dinghies to come across to the UK. I mean, what in the name of Giscard d'Estaing is that all about?
Well, as I say, they don't really have the incentive or the imperatives to tackle it. It's quite striking to me that the last few months has been the lowest period since this deal was introduced in 2023 for interceptions. The French are not intercepting more than around a third of those trying to cross the Channel. And that is because they don't want to risk their own men and equipment, but also because it's them frankly leaving their country, and it's something that gets rid of them out of French waters into British ones. So I have to say I don't think that even if we get an extension, we're going to see dramatic efforts on the French behalf, and it's probably going to be a multi-pronged approach, but not much that Labour's done seems to have been deterring them last year.
Yeah, nothing at all. And of course they came in with, smash the gangs. That's quietly disappeared from the mouths of politicians and press releases, but they rumble on to fight another day. But I think we all know how this story ends. Let's just move on to something you've written today in The Telegraph, reference Nigel Farage. What's happening here on this story, James?
Well, this is about the kind of convergence on the right of British politics. I think it might be fair to say that Reform has become a bit more Tory, and the Tories have become a bit more like Reform. If you look at their policy positions, there is a strikingly little clear blue water. And I think there are some people at the top of Reform, and also some around the Conservatives who have mixed feelings about this. Obviously, they want to have strong, robust policy, but people wonder if they're both losing their identities as a result of this.
Is there, no politician will say it out loud, but, this idea of having some kind of pact, whether that pact is some sort of, standing down candidates in certain seats, or whether it is something a little bit more purposeful than that, actually joining up in some capacity, although the smart money says if that did happen, it would be after an election. What are you hearing on that front? Because there is always abject denial from both.
So privately, my understanding is that there are Conservative MPs certainly willing to talk off the record about it and think it'll be a much bigger issue in a month's time after May the 7th. I think that right now we're in mid-Parliament. The key thing, of course, with all this stuff is time. And I think a much bigger sort of imperative to create a deal will be in the 3, 5, 6 months or so before an election where something could be done. I was quite struck that today they're announcing the local election candidates, and another former Tory MP, Damien Moore, is now standing. He was a Red Wall Tory MP in 2019. He's now standing in Westminster City Council elections, and that to me suggests that actually there are places in the Red Wall where Reform would do quite well. The Tories wouldn't do so well anymore. And so then there's the question of geography, in which is that, do you allow some seats in the north, for instance, to be handed to Reform while ensuring the Tories get a free run in the south? All these things have got to be worked out. Both party leaders deny it, but I think that minds are inevitably turning to it, given the shellacking the Tories are going to receive on the 7th of May. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The Reform, of course, are penciled in to do rather well at the local election. Still a bit of a question mark over Wales, though, isn't there? And I find it curious that I would have thought Reform in particular would have been all over Wales, like months ago, and right up until May the 7th. It's almost like this thing's not happening. It's only in a few weeks' time. Yeah, quite. We've got 4 weeks to go. I think the D'Hondt system is fascinating because it means that it might be a sort of impediment to tactical voting to stop Reform, as we kind of saw shades of in Caerphilly. I think right now Reform are having a difficult campaign, to be honest. I think in Scotland there's been a fair few issues. I think 8 candidates had to be stood down. So Wales is carrying on. But what Wales has is Plaid Cymru, which of course has backed Labour governments in Cardiff Bay, but it isn't tainted by office. And you have this kind of nationalist appeal, which I think does work for some Reform voters. So I think Plaid might come first and Reform second.
Some criticism of Reform have come from Reform supporters, and that is that they're not being very reformy. They're being quite conservative, as you mentioned at the beginning of all of this, James. That, of course, has sort of opened a small but one would argue significant gap for other parties like Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib and the like. And, you know, we get callers probably on certainly on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, that say, well, you know, I was Reform, but now I'm going Restore.
I think that is something that chimes with what I've heard as well. I think it's a couple of things, one of which is the kind of feel of a party, another of its personnel. Obviously, a huge number of Tories have joined. Some people feel a natural sense of displacement in that their party has now become something different, a different type of project. Also, there's also competition in the marketplace. You know, it's all of us, like, we're shopping around. I think that these days, there's things that have made Reform successful, weakening party loyalties, the ability to set up a new pop-up organisation, all those strengths can be replicated by others. So you've now got the Rupert Lowe Restore Party, as you're saying, which I think got 4% in the YouGov poll, which was strikingly high. But second of all, I mean, I'd make the point that there's some evidence just that voters are going to the Greens as well. They're radical, they're new, and I think they're having a message that challenges people. And I think that's going to be really interesting and a factor in why Reform's seen a slight dip in its polls over the past 6 months or so.
James, great to see you again. Thank you. James Heal. He is, of course, Deputy Political Editor over there at The Spectator. That little junction of Reform, Restore, Advance, and, of course, overarchingly the Conservatives, still officially the opposition, is fascinating. The usual rule of thumb would be that it would be between the Tories and Reform, but what could happen is the other parties could scupper in terms of diluting votes, and you know we will see evidence where there is a seat that Reform would have won had it not been for a Restore candidate who didn't do brilliantly, but they hoovered up 900 votes, and that made the difference between the Reform person winning and the Labour or Tory that did. So there's going to be those things. Reform are fully aware of this, by the way. They're not stupid. But they're also in a position where they've got to play a fairly tactical game, and that game is to try and win an election and win over voters that might ordinarily not have gone for Reform. So the accusation that they're moving to the centre, I don't think that's quite true, but they are modifying for a wider appeal. Now, the last time I looked, I don't think that's a bad thing, because if you can hoover up those additional voters that are sort of wavering and not annoy your existing voter base, some you will, and they'll leg it to Rupert Lowe or Ben Habib, but generally, if you can create that, then you've struck gold politically. You've done the job. You've got people to compromise within your own sphere. So I don't think they should really be criticised. I mean, if suddenly Reform started saying, yes, we're going to adopt Ed Miliband's net zero policies, you could understand that might be maybe a step too far. But you take the point. Let's go to Jill in Cornwall, where we began, Jill, which is why is Britain more divided than ever? What are your thoughts? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. Well, my thought on it is that it was pointless having a blinking election, because the parties that stood for and what they said they were going to do, and we've got a Labour Party in now that supposedly have promised this and promised that, has done nothing. I'm fed up with not hearing any politician against what's happening. I'm fed up with the fact that Keir Starmer has sort of, he's ignored the things that matter to the people of this country. He doesn't make any answer to it. He doesn't make any, excuse for it. He just doesn't answer to anything that is upsetting people of the country. And I'm sorry, I'm not ashamed to say I voted for Brexit when it came around. I just thought we needed to get away from Europe and make our own rules. But we're now in a situation where we're paying them, getting nothing back, and Keir Starmer is doing nothing about the money that he's wasting by giving it to France. I mean, what is wrong with him?
Well, it's all madness, isn't it? But of course, the ball started rolling with the previous Conservative administration because they were throwing oodles of quid over the channel as well. So he's kind of picked up that mantle. It's so ridiculous that you sometimes, you lay in bed thinking about this stuff, thinking, well, maybe there is no other way. Maybe we all think there is. I don't believe this, by the way, but there is that sense that maybe there's something I'm massively missing here.
Well, I mean, I've stopped donating to the lifeboat company because I feel that they sort of go out every day, and the only people that they pick up are people that we have living in this country that are illegal. I mean, why not go and you might as well go and drain the prisons. Just take
but if you're I've always thought that's maybe unfair on the RNLI because their job isn't to be political. If something is in trouble, they're not going to suddenly go, you shouldn't be here, mate, clear off.
I agree. The trouble is that I'm angry that nothing is being done.
I agree. And it seems... I know I always simplify this by saying it cannot be beyond the wit of mankind to stop a rubber boat coming over the channel, but I happen to genuinely believe that. It cannot be impossible. Sure, it cannot be impossible. Now we've got tens and tens of thousands of people rammed in hotels who made that journey at the cost of £6-7 million per day, and there's additional costs you could bolt onto that. Even economically, nobody could argue that's okay.
No. And I've just had bills for my council tax and my water bill.
Yep, it's gone up.
It's all gone up.
Gas has gone up. Everything's gone up. Nothing ever comes down. You never get the council go, we're putting it down by 50 quid a month.
No, exactly. It's gone up. And I look at what the increase is and what it's going to cost me and my family. And councils are doing nothing. Government is doing nothing. And what I'm upset about is the fact that we can pick up the boats and bring them over here and pick up the people, but we can't. Why don't we do like Australia do, turn the blinking boats around and send them back to France? Why do we need France to tell us?
Well, Australia have a processing depot on one of the islands, so that's how they're able to do it. But there's no reason you couldn't implement. So no one who tries to get into Australia via boat, I mean, people might try other ways, but nobody who comes via a boat ever actually sets foot in Australia.
No.
So they never actually get there. And even when they're given asylum, they still don't go to Australia. They go to one of Australia's sort of island territories. So that seems to work. I don't know why we've not done something similar. We've got loads of little islands floating around the place. Listen, Jill, I've got to move. You've been great. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. She started off with Brexit because this report that we're focusing on here from the Telegraph has revealed the vast majority of the electorate now consider Britain to be more fractured than it was during the Brexit referendum. The one thing we haven't really mentioned is if you take Brexit, the question has been, is it down to Brexit? We've got all this division and people not just a little bit miffed with each other, really angry, almost wanting death to people who have a different opinion to them. But it isn't just Brexit, of course, is it? Because some of these arguments go across the world. If you go to America, the so-called woke agenda, I hate the word, but for the purpose of this, the woke agenda is sort of everywhere. DEI, all the whole kind of training to get your, the name of which has escaped me, but it's training in the workplace to stop your staff being racist, even though none of them are actually racist. There's stuff like that. The weirdness, identity culture, that's a big part of this. And then you get into gender wars and flags and all of this stuff. That's not completely exclusive to the UK. I mean, it's big here, but not completely exclusive. 0344 499 1000. Now, before we go any further, here's a chance for you to win some money. Of course, we've got 20,000 quid in the pot. It's completely tax-free, courtesy of us here at Talk. £20,000 straight into your bank account. Do whatever you like. You're not going to get taxed on it. You can spend it. You can splash it. You can go on holiday, buy a car, whatever you want. Up to you. 20,000 quid is not an insignificant sum of money, of course. It could be yours. Let's have a listen to how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Seats. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to David in just a second, who's in Hampshire. Before we do, it's day 2 of the new Voice of Doom. It's a mystery voice, but it's political, so you're looking usually for a politician or somebody heavily associated with the world of politics in whatever form. Could be left-wing, could be right-wing, could be dead, could be alive. Very simple question. Who is this?
To their advantage.
Now, I think that's genuinely, I think that's the easiest one we've ever done in like a year. But nobody got it right yesterday. Here it is again.
To their advantage.
If you think you know who that is, 87222. 87222. Don't phone, just message. And if somebody does get it bang on, we will reveal who the voice belongs to in the next hour. Here it is again.
To their advantage.
87222. 222. David is in Hampshire on the Big Divide. David, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Love the programme.
Thank you, mate.
Love the presentation, everything about it.
That's very
It's
good.
brilliant.
I agree.
Right. Ian, you had a conversation, a very good conversation with a gentleman caller by the name of Paul.
Paul in Newport, he was brilliant, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. During that conversation, I think the question of the division was answered when he mentioned a country by the name of Switzerland.
Yep.
It's the only true democracy, isn't it, Switzerland?
With their referendums and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. That's what's divided us. We're not a democracy anymore.
Yeah.
The last referendum we had was about Brexit.
Yeah.
That's when we stopped being a democracy. We went downhill from then.
Did we go downhill because there was something wrong with Brexit or because of the way that it was done?
No, we lost our democratic view. We lost. It seemed to disappear.
But we were given. I mean, it was. If you think about it, it was the mother of all referendums, wasn't it? Really. I mean, it was such a big decision to me.
Yeah, but that's how everything big should be put to a referendum.
Yeah.
It should. The people should be asked the question. All these people that we've had since then, the Blues, the Reds, I won't say the word P, but they urinate in the same pot. That's the problem. They both urinate in the same pot. You need something, you need the democracy back because you've lost it with them.
Yeah.
All they're doing is manoeuvring for a job. Really, what they're doing is saying, please, sir, knock your door. Can I have a job, please? Can you put your cross there? That's all they're saying. They're only interested in themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think politicians have previously, I think, worked on the basis that, it doesn't really matter. David Cameron was very relaxed about immigration. Boris Johnson, incredibly relaxed about immigration, which is extraordinary considering he sort of dined out pretending he wasn't that person. But actually, I think appetites and people's views have changed now. I think there is now a very different... You can't take the electorate for granted as you might have done once before. Listen, David, I have to move because the news is about to bite our heels. You've been great. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, David in Hampshire. More calls and comments on the way. Loads to get through. Why is Britain more divided than ever? I think it's more than just Brexit. I think it's more than just immigration. All those issues are live and relevant to this, but I think it's greater. I think that kind of so-called woke agenda plays its part. Gender, flags, God knows what, patriotism. The list goes on. What is your assessment as to why this happens to be? Why is it that 4 out of 5 people believe that to be the case? And, of course, we've got the voice of doom. Will we get a winner? Simple question. Who is this?
To their advantage.
87222, if you think you know.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the home of common sense. Yeah, welcome back. More calls and comments from you on the way. We are discussing that new report out today revealing how the vast majority of the electorate now consider Britain is more fractured and divided than it was even during the Brexit referendum. There is a sense of greater division. It is shared, this assessment is shared by a majority across all social groups, which is interesting. The country perceived as splits along the lines of identity, age, geography, and of course, political beliefs. What do you see as being behind all of that? Also this afternoon, the Strait of Hormuz has been declared shut by Tehran. They're accusing the United States of violating their ceasefire agreement. This comes amid fresh explosions which have been targeting America's Arab allies. And yet Donald Trump maintains the truce is still actually in effect. So who is telling the truth on the truce? Is it the USA? Or is it Iran? Your comments. And as you've been hearing, France has turned down the latest proposition put forward by the Home Secretary and this government, which suggests deploying British Border Force vessels to intercept small boats and return them to French territory. The French said no, because the French always say no. It's as simple as that. What is the answer? 0344 499 1000. Mag says, I agree with Jill. This is a serious question. Starmer should be in front of MPs' panels and should answer questions. Why have you given France over £500 million of our money? What have they done? Get an itemised bill. That would be good, wouldn't it? Rather than just like a receipt saying, yep, 500 mil. Could you break it down for us, Mr. Macron, please? You know, kind of day by day, bit by bit. Might be rather helpful. 0344 499 1000. So there's a lot to get through here. And of course, we know what is happening in the Middle East. Iran risking all manner of issues with the war there, triggering potentially a sort of 2008 style financial crisis. This is the governor of the Bank of England speaking here. The knock-on effects is what is happening, not just on the forecourts, but all over the place. We talked about some of it yesterday, are absolutely huge. Let's get a word with Shankar Singham, who is the CEO of Competare Group and former advisor to the UK Trade Secretary. Good afternoon to you, Shankar.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, good as gold. Nice to have you with us. So it's not an overstatement to say this is a deeply disturbing issue. It's got tentacles. It could go on for a long time. And it's not just a battle in the Middle East. It's affecting us over here.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, I think the Straits of Hormuz, I think, as everybody knows, is a vital trading sort of choke point, if you will, and we're sort of seeing the effect that it's having, you know, when it's shut on oil prices, on energy prices. There are certain countries that are more vulnerable to it than others. So particularly the East Asian countries, Korea, Japan, India, etc., are very vulnerable to these barriers. But we are all going to see the effect of this in terms of energy prices increasing. And of course, you know, in the UK, we already have very, very high energy costs that are sort of full-time the US sort of average. So we're already starting from a point of having extremely high energy costs, and this is only going to make it worse. I think you pointed out at the top of the hour the Stargate AI investment, data center investment, you know, not happening because of those energy costs. So it is very, very hard to be a competitive country with energy costs that are as high as they are in the UK. So this is not going to help, you know, that situation.
So when Andrew Bailey makes that comparison, talking about the 2008, the whole subprime mortgage debacle and all that followed from that, do you think he overstates it, or has he called it correctly?
Well, I think that they're different things. I mean, I think the subprime market was an issue, much more to do with increased asset prices as a result of a lot of government distortionary regulation, I will say, in the financial and the banking sector, that led to these products being available. You also had in the US, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the state-owned companies, essentially buying back the risk. You had a lot of incentive for the US banks to hold non-performing assets. So you had a sort of perfect storm of things that eventually broke. And because these entities had become so large and so systemically important, that created a risk. This is a very different thing. Obviously, this has been caused by a conflict. So there's a lot more variables at play with this because, if we're able to get a ceasefire, if we're able to reopen the Straits of Hormuz, or over time, if alternative routes are devised, and we're already seeing in the UAE, in Oman, in India, attempts to have alternative routes. And the big shipping companies are looking at alternative routes because it's not only the getting the straits open, it's the insurance risk that you have to deal with as well.
Yeah, and of course the knock-on effect is, I guess, what gets us as consumers. We can talk about trade and the wider economic implications, but in the supermarket, on the forecourt, those kind of areas, we're hearing about surge pricing and the like. This could be uncomfortable for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental problem here is that energy is in everything. Energy, when energy costs go up, everything becomes more expensive, sometimes significantly so. So if you look at steel, for example, about 40% of steel is energy cost. So and steel is in so many things that you buy, cars, you name it. And so when that cost goes up, the other problem we have in the UK is that we have not been growing the economy for about 25 years. I mean, if you look back at GDP per capita growth in the UK over the last 25 years, it's been a very stagnant picture. It's getting worse. In fact, and some might say that we're in a GDP per capita recession already because our GDP per capita is actually contracting. So, you can weather a lot of these shocks and you can weather a lot of these storms if your economy is fundamentally resilient and you are growing the economy at a reasonable rate. Go back 25 years, the US economy and the UK economy, roughly in terms of GDP per capita, about the same. Now the US economy is 40% richer than the UK economy, which means it's important for people, individual households, individual families, are 40% poorer in the UK than they are in the US and comparable places in the US. So you've got a lot of problems there that don't allow you to be resilient in the face of this kind of external shock.
Absolutely, and politicians used to love that phrase of fixing the roof while the sun shines. I can't remember how many of them have wheeled that one out, but of course it appears when I look upwards in this respect, Shankar, I'm seeing a big hole still in the roof, which I think is what you're alluding to.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to get back to growth. I mean, bottom line. I mean, we've got to do the regulatory reforms, the supply side reforms. I chair the Growth Commission. We've made recommendations to the UK and the US and the Japanese governments about how they can, improve the sort of economic growth picture. But what we see on the ground is far from doing those things. We're seeing quite a lot of regulatory burden being increased. I think Stargate referred to not just the energy costs, but also the domestic regulatory picture in the UK. And our economic models suggest a lot of GDP per capita in the UK is being lost as a result of the regulatory arrangement.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? You look back at, and I was looking at these figures the other day, look back at 2001. They were halcyon days, weren't they, when you look at GDP per capita and the like. Wow. But you've got to go back that far, really, to find any evidence of growth, which is extraordinary. A quarter of a century and more.
Yeah, and it's not true to say that the whole world is like this. It's not true to say that it's just a temper of the times, that we just don't have a hope anymore. The US has been a bit more resilient in terms of economic growth, but there's really no reason why we can't get back to the kind of growth we had at that time, or even in the sort of 80s and 90s when 2 to 3% GDP per capita growth was the norm. We are a long way away from the frontier, if you will, in terms of where growth starts to slow down.
Sure.
Because you can't do any more. You can't improve your economy. You can't improve your regulations anymore. We're a long way away from that. We could do a lot more, and there's a lot more innovation that we ought to be seeing in our economies that we're not seeing because we have not allowed the ordinary sort of growth forces to work.
What do you think happens here? Because I'm forever confused about. I mean, we should always be a bit confused about politicians, and politicians should always exist with a big question mark over their head, whatever party they represent. By dint of their desire to run things, I think is always a reason to question them. Some, over the years, have been incredibly successful business people. You're a very successful British businessman. You meet these people. You must. I mean, do they listen and then not act? Do you look from afar and think, what bit are you not getting? What breaks down here? Because this particular government, I know you're not here to talk specific politics, but this particular government doesn't have a lot of business experience on its front bench. That's just a fact. So you would think they would rely on voices like yours to go, this is how you do it. What breaks down between people like you, whether it's James Dyson, whoever is meeting with these people saying, look, this is what you need to do, and then you wake up the next morning and none of it is happening?
Yes, and quite often the opposite has happened. But I mean, I think what I would say is that there's lots of reasons for for this. I think one, if you go back to Keir Starmer's original statement when he came in, that economic growth was the sort of primary purpose of this government, by which he meant wealth creation. Many of us sort of reacted to that and said, fine, that we agree with that entirely. And we know how to do it. We know how to help you achieve that goal, and we'll come in and help you. I think part of the problem is a lack of understanding about what economic growth actually is, where it comes from. It comes from the private sector. It comes from the literally billions of interactions between voluntary exchanges between willing buyers and willing sellers. Yep. It's at that level that economic growth actually happens and that wealth is actually created. But there's a lack of understanding, I think, in politicians of all stripes, actually, that where growth actually comes from. It does not come from the government spending more. It does not come from the government printing more money. These are things that are anti-growth. Very often, but they don't see that. I think the other problem, and it's a bigger problem in a way, is that even were they to want to do the right things, the sort of bureaucratic process in the UK is so mired in in treacle at the moment. It's really difficult to get things done. In fact, ironically, the Keir Starmer sometimes sounds like Liz Truss sounded like before she left office, when he says that that we just found that the levers of power are not connected to anything.
Yeah.
We say we want to do something and then nothing happens.
I mean, a lot of what you just said there, though, is kind of sixth form economics, isn't it? Governments don't invent, innovate, advance or manufacture. People like you do that, and those that are in associated and similar areas of business. And everybody knows that. It's not hard to get your head around that, but something clearly gets lost in translation.
And occasionally you'll get a little bright spark of something that's sort of going in the right direction. So, for example, the Fingleton review on nuclear regulatory, where he made a series of recommendations about eliminating some of the regulatory barriers, because it takes so long to build a nuclear power station in the UK. I mean, it takes 20, 25 years, whereas in other countries it's more like 5 to 10 years. And of course, we don't need to talk about planning and housing, and all of these things are virtually impossible to do in the UK, but there have been some sort of positive things that have happened, and I think one of the problems of the UK economy as an observer of it and an observer of many countries around the world, and we've worked in probably 80 countries around the world, what is very clear about the UK is that the regulatory bias favours the incumbent in the UK more so than in many other countries we've worked in, which means large incumbent companies tend to be the ones who determine what the regulatory system looks like, and that tends to disfavour new entrants, new businesses. People like James Dyson, who you mentioned, new entrepreneurs tend to be disfavoured by that, and they tend to go elsewhere, unfortunately. So one of the things that any government in the UK needs to do is correct that balance and make the economy much more dynamic and much more favourable to entrepreneurs. There's a significant amount of the economy that consists of businesses providing services to the government. So, getting actual private sector economic activity to take off, which you can only do through sensible taxation, lower levels of regulation, lowering the size of the state, dealing with the welfare, budget and so forth. I mean, the UK, we pay, it's probably getting on for £300 billion a year just on our debt servicing and on the NHS. So just two things.
Yeah.
And you're already a long way behind the curve if that's where your starting point is. So you have to move on all of these things at the same time. And then what will happen if a government can do that is you'll start to see entrepreneurs coming back. You'll start to see new businesses being created. I always say to people, if you just look at the US stock exchange, the top 30 companies over the last 20, 30 years, they're totally different now than they were before. You've got the tech companies, the Mag 7, they're the dominant companies on the stock exchange. 20 years ago, none of them existed.
Yeah.
In the UK, it's the same companies.
Yeah, that's incredibly telling. It's a great factoid to finish on. Listen, Shankar, great to have you on, sir. We will speak again, I'm sure. Appreciate your time. Shankar Singham, CEO of Competere Group, former advisor to the UK Trade Secretary, also advising around the world, particularly to the United States as well. I mean, isn't that interesting, that last point that he mentioned there in terms of where's our growth gone? Where's it all gone? Where is it? We still have a lack of innovation in many respects, and I think he alluded to the fact there that much of that is down to rules, regulations, bureaucracy that just simply stands in the way of creativity and innovation. Back to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Sarah in Morden, who says Britain became divided when the left started losing the argument and resorted to calling anyone who questioned their narrative names like racist, xenophobic, bigot, Nazi, far right, extreme right. Normal people called the most vile names, and it continues to this day. Then they say we are divisive. Yes, that's true. I know the left would say, have you not heard what the right call us? I know there's a bit of that as well. But it did rather stand in the way. All of that Sarah's just made, all of those names that are thrown out left, right and centre because you happen to have a view on channel migration. Therefore, you're a Nazi. I mean, it almost beggars belief that this is where we're at. These are the T's and C's of conversation these days, that will come up. And even worse than that, I mean, I just, every day, if I happen to glance at Twitter and see the kind of names that people get called merely for having a different opinion, and, you know, often not even a contentious opinion, just a different opinion. Nobody's really mentioned COVID as well. That was a big divider as well, because some people thought it was a big conspiracy theory. And others, like me, thought it was mostly ineptitude and scaredy-catness from governments. And it was that. It was a sort of lack of direction and groupthink, and everybody just followed. Oh, France have done this, and we better do that. It was all of this, and stay at home because we don't know what else to do. Don't go to work. We'll pay your wages. That put us into huge debt. So that was also a deciding factor. But again, you know, I'd have, you know, the world's greatest epidemiologist on the show who would be explaining why COVID is not like just the flu and why it's different. It's not going to kill you, but not the average person, but why it's different. And then you'd get, you know, Bob in Arbroath would tweet in, dropping the F word and the C bombs left, right and centre about the guys. Bloke don't know what he's talking about. It's like, well, I think he probably does know what he's talking about. He's a pretty qualified fella. And then you know, the insults and you know, you should not be allowed to practice this man. I hope he gets cancer, you know, his kids die and all sorts of other horrendous. You think, really? Really? Because he has a different view? You want his family dead? Man alive, this is really sinister territory. Before we talk to Michael, who's in Hampshire, let's just do the voice of doom. Have we got a winner? Remember, about half an hour ago, we played you the mystery voice. Here it is.
To their advantage.
Simple question. Who is that? These were some of the guesses. Robert Jenrick, David Miliband, Tom Tugendhat, Ian Collins. No. There is a VT editor at the BBC called Ian Collins. I think he's on the credits of Only Fools and Horses, I think. I'm almost sure he is. Barbara Windsor. Can we hear it again, Sam?
To their advantage.
To their advantage.
To their advantage.
Get out of my pub. It's got, you can sort of see loosely. Mel Stride, no. Andrew. Anyone from another country will go, what the hell was that reference? Andrew Griffith, no. Mel Stride, it is not. We do not have a winner, which means it rolls over to tomorrow for day 3 of The Voice of Doom. Back to your calls. Michael in Hampshire. What have you got for us, Michael? Afternoon.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, fire away.
Real pleasure to get to talk to you. It's been ages trying to get through.
Oh, nice.
Over the week. Listen,
nice to have you with us.
I'm a huge fan of your programme, your specific programme. I love your discourse. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
You know, I sit here, right, and firstly, sadly, my mum died 5 years ago at the age of 93, and she was born in 1927, and she was used to social discourse being people with an opinion that could discuss and debate and maybe not agree, but get to somewhere where there's a level of understanding and acceptance of the other side. And my biggest, you know, I see Keir Starmer, take the politics out of it. You know, there's no guidance, there's no leadership. And every time you see him at P&Qs, you get division, hate, the far right, this, that, everything else. And then back in January, Ian, you'll recall that he stood up, and don't quote me the date, I don't know. It was like the 15th of January, and he said, and of course on this day I'd like to wish Merry Christmas to the leader of the Reform Party, because today, of course, is the day that Russia celebrates its Christmas. And I think to myself, you're the leader of our country. You are the guiding premier that stands there, that you want us to follow, want us to believe in, build a navy, build a response, stop the Clapham riots, anything like that. And he stands there and he wishes Nigel Farage a Merry Christmas because it's Russia's Christmas Day.
Yeah, and that's the. I mean, there it is, right there, isn't it? Everything that Keir Starmer said he was going to be about. But I think with this particular government, Michael, I don't think they can help it. Angela Rayner and these kind of characters. When we had when Sarah messaged saying, anyone who has a different view is called a racist and a bigot and a Nazi. Yeah. That's Angela Rayner. It's people like her. They genuinely believe that. Tories are scum. All of that.
I had the local Labour councillor knock on my door. And I fly a flag of the Union in my back garden. It's above my house. You can see it. I'm proud to be British. I'm a royalist. I'm proud of my country and everything else. And he knocked on my door and he looked at my car and he just said to me, do you know what? You're not my particular or typical voter base, but is it worth talking about the Labour Party? And I thought, well, with that opening line, why am I even want to talk? You've already discounted me, in my opinion. Because you can see that I'm, working class with a flag, a nice house, and a nice car, and you've got Zach Polansky grinding on stage saying that the Greens have come together. No, they haven't. No. It's 5 different rallies come together, and he's claiming it's all down to him. And it's clearly not. And Ian, I know you're a busy man, and I'm really grateful, but I just got to say, your programme a few weeks back when you said about the Chinese embassy with 200 rooms downstairs, I was so desperate to call you and say, well, given you could put 4 people in each room, what are those 800 people, brigade of people, going to do downstairs? Filing? Typing?
There's a lot. Listen, Michael, there's a lot of filing to do at the Chinese embassy. That's all I'm saying. That's one word for it. Listen, great call. Lovely to have a first-time caller like Michael on. You've been brilliant, Michael. Do call again as well. Thank you, and thank you for your kind comments too. Mike in Lincoln says, what the hell was that? Peter Barnes, this is earlier on, said, people feel let down by politics because we tried 3 types of Brexit, May, Johnson and Trust. But that's just bunkum. The only one who came close to giving Brexiteers the one they voted for was Trust. But we all know what the blog establishment did to her, don't we? Well, yeah, I get that. I know that is a view, that it was the blog, it's not the blog, is it? It's not. It's what do we call the civil service? The swamp, the blog, the blob, rather than the blog. That's it. I mean, this was really the money markets that reacted, wasn't it, to Liz Truss? I know it's a deeper story than that, but yes, that was his view, Mike, and I guess, it's a shame he's not still here because he could have responded to that. 0344 499 1000. Right, here's your very last chance, and it is your last chance because this closes at 4 o'clock today, so it's in half an hour's time. 4 o'clock today. We're giving you the chance to win that life-changing 20,000 quid, completely tax-free here on Talk. £20,000, doesn't matter who you are, is a significant amount of money. It could be yours, tax-free. Spend it, splash it, save it, do whatever you like. You've only got half an hour to take part in this, and then the lines close. We've run this for about 10 days or something now. The lines are going to close at 4. If you want to be the winner of that 20,000 quid, have a listen to this and find out how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 3:30. We've got a lot to talk about here. We're going to take a bit of respite from the heady world of politics, international trade, war and doom, and speak to Sean Keach. He is, of course, Head of Science and Technology over there at The Sun, who always brings us some great headlines and stories. Good to see you, Sean.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah, no, lovely to have you here. Let's start with WhatsApp. Because WhatsApp is interesting. I've got a funny relationship with WhatsApp.
Good or bad?
I use WhatsApp. I use it all the time. I use it more than I do for normal messaging. But I refuse to believe. I see WhatsApp as like a kind of bucket version of texting. It's like, so on, you know, you get your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever it is you've got, and you can text message on a normal text.
Yeah.
Okay, that is Porsche territory. That is proper messaging, lovely, nice, clean messages, everything's good. And then you go on to this dirty old format called
the
WhatsApp.
CD-ROM. Is that when you turn down the wrong street in a new city and you're like...
Yeah, it's a bit like you can have a lovely, beautiful Rangemaster cooker, or you can have a little old gas cooker that you take camping. That's WhatsApp.
You know, it's funny.
Texting is and like everybody disagrees with me on this point, by the way.
Not in America. In America, WhatsApp is like an alien creation, which is funny because it is American. But if you go to America, no one uses it. It's all iMessage. It's all everyone's obsessed with. And yet here, WhatsApp is by far and away the most popular.
So America aren't big on WhatsApp?
No, they love iMessage. It's the like.
Sam, our technical operator, is with us on this as well, or with me on this.
I quite like iMessage. I think it's very fun. I don't know if you know this, but if you hold down on the send button when you're sending a text and you tap on the right, there's an option called invisible ink, and if you tap that, it sends the text, but it sort of censors it, so the other person has to like rub on it to reveal it. So if you're talking about like movie spoilers in a group chat, you can send invisible texts that other people can't see unless they rub on it. It's my
This is on
tip.
WhatsApp?
On iMessage.
Oh, no, I didn't know this.
This is iMessage. It's so good. You've got to try it. You've got to text someone with iMessage.
I love this.
So if you tap something out, hello, and then you hold down on the send button.
Well, everyone's doing it out there now. Did you know this?
And then you can do invisible ink.
Did you know as well, and I think I did know this and then forgot it, but I was only reminded of it this week, because phones are still a little bit fiddly. And you know when you want to edit something and you put your finger on the lettering and it's never on the right one and you can't move it. Did you know if you press the space bar?
I did know that.
It works as like a mouse.
It's so good. Look, so many people don't know that, and it's such a good trick.
It is a good trick. Did you know that, Finn? Did you know that bit? He's not even listening to me. Look, he's the producer. He can't even hear me now. Even as I speak, he's not even aware.
But it's great because you can drop the cursor exactly where you want it to be. I use that all the time. Because I use my Notes app. I was talking about it the other day. I use my Notes app all the time. And so to get the cursor in the right place, hold down on the space bar.
Hold down on the space bar.
Put the cursor in the right place.
There's always these little hacks. Every now and again you see on
tips.
social media somebody says 10 things that Apple won't tell you. No, they will tell you. You're not telling me for the first time. They are there.
That's probably me in those videos.
It's probably, yes, indeed. But sometimes Finn's just sent me a message.
Is it invisible? Everyone's going to be getting invisible text now.
It says, I can read this out because it's in context, can't I? No, I can't read that out. It's very funny. That's not an invisible one, though.
You've not sent an invisible?
No, he's used the little thing, you know, because there's little. You can have your message arrive in big form, small form. It can bounce up and down. It can. So it's not that. It's another.
Yes.
Invisible chat.
Maybe later you'll get one.
Oh, hang on. Here's invisible chat.
And then you rub on it. So it's also good if you're like on the tube or something.
I rubbed the word and it worked.
I hope it wasn't offensive.
Oh, it's very offensive. Don't worry about that. And I have to rub again. It goes. There it is. Look. It's not a real rub, is it? It's just a swipe.
No, it
depends how long the text is.
It is. It does.
Oh, look, it's disappearing again. Hey, I've forgotten how you said you'd do it. Anyway. Back to WhatsApp. This was a whole conversation that started.
There is big WhatsApp news this week.
There it is. Back again. I love this.
They're starting to roll out usernames. That's the WhatsApp usernames for the first time. And it's a real problem because if you want to WhatsApp someone, which as we talked about is really a really prominent way of texting here, you have to give people your phone number. And sometimes you want to text someone, you don't necessarily want them to have the phone number. They're going to do username. So you can just share your username with someone. They can text you, but they don't need to know your phone number, which is good news.
I like that.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
Finn
also,
would find that particularly helpful on a Friday.
And also, if you're a celebrity like yourself,
he wished he used it last night. But
your
that's
WhatsApp
story.
username. If your WhatsApp username gets leaked on the internet, for instance, you can set up a key so that someone needs your special key as well to message your username. So there's a bit of extra privacy as well, which is good.
Is this up and running now?
It's rolling out slowly. So you might already have it now. If you go into your WhatsApp profile settings, it might be there, it might not. They're testing it on some people before rolling it out to everyone. So you might have it. I don't know. If you're a lucky person.
I'll have a little look in a moment. Let's move to ChatGPT. Bosses telling companies to do 4 days a week because we're an AI era. So we've got councils being told by the Conservatives to do 5 days a week because that 4-day thing is not in everybody's... It's not everybody's cup of tea of how a workplace should look. ChatGPT. I mean, if anyone's going to say work from home, it's going to be an AI company, right?
Well, this is it. I think AI has been having a bit of a PR problem of late, and so they're trying to sort of, make the future of AI seem a bit more positive. And they're basically saying that in the future, when AI has replaced so much work, they don't want the wealth to concentrate in just a few people who run the AI systems, and so they're looking at ways of basically giving dividends to people. And one of them is basically saying have an efficiency dividend. So if you've got workers who are using AI, give them a day off a week. Yeah. If you've got regular people who aren't involved in AI at all, give them an actual dividend. Create a public wealth fund where everyone gets a bit of cash and they can all enjoy the benefits of AI that's going to bring. Whether this will happen or not, I don't know, but it's certainly what they're recommending. So 4-day weeks.
It does seem an obvious thing to do for a company like that.
If everyone's being more efficient, it feels like it should make sense to reward people.
Yeah, well, you'd like to think so. But will it apply to all people?
Well, this is the idea of the public wealth fund, is they're saying that people don't often have the means to invest in AI or maybe don't work in AI, but if the AI companies who are making all this money put money into a public wealth fund, then that could be distributed to everyone. A bit like a sort of mass universal income system.
Yes, good point.
But they're funding it, or might.
Might be funding it. Let's move to... I know that you've been really excited about space travel this last week. Because, of course, they've been up there on the moon. Do you know, I looked up the other day, I know this is a silly thing to do, because when you see them going around the moon, they're going very slow, aren't they? They're just very slowly plodding along, easing, gliding around.
But it's not. It's
Well, I realise they're doing 3,500 miles an hour.
Yes, and this is one of the...
That's mental.
It's one of the crazy things, is like, if you're sort of floating around in space in your spacesuit, one of the deadliest things is just a tiny bit of debris, because that's moving at, like, bullet speed. It would just pierce right through you. So,
yes.
Yeah, but it looks a bit boring and slow, admittedly. But we're spinning right now at huge speeds, but you just don't notice it.
No, well, that's very true, isn't it? But if I was going to shell out that amount of money for a rocket, I'd want people to go, wow, that's fast.
Yeah, like a McLaren of rockets.
When you show it to everybody, they go, that's not very fast, is it? They go, no, it goes faster. It just doesn't look like it. Yeah, right. Yeah.
We'll get there one day.
You should see my other rocket.
Once they all start competing, we'll have some Lamborghinis of the rocket world.
Absolutely right. So, I mean, what they've done up there, just explain, if you could, Sean, because there are some people who are not into this, and they're going, hang on, you've gone all that way, not even gone on the moon, so that's a bit weird. I know you went to the far side of the moon, so that takes you further than any human has ever been. And the imagery is fantastic, that's great. But what is achieved by this, other than a vanity project for the United States and Canada? I bet that hurts Trump, doesn't it?
Doing stuff in space is very difficult. And so we do want to put people on the moon and eventually Mars, and we want to build a base on the moon. But you can't just go straight to that step. You have to test the waters effectively because you don't want to put human lives at risk. And so this is basically one of those steps of... The previous step was, can we get the rocket going up in space? Now this one is, can we get humans to go around the moon? Then they're going to do it again where they actually put people on the moon, and then eventually in the 2030s we will have a permanent base on the moon, is the plan. Whether those timelines work out remains to be seen. But hopefully by 2028 we will have people on the moon again, and then in the 2030s we will have a proper base on the moon, which is exciting. You like sci-fi.
But what does a base look like at that stage? Because I know the ultimate idea is that you would, have space tourism and people could go up there, they could stay in the moon hotel, and that would be fantastic. But an initial base, it's not going to be. It's not like going to be one of those AI data centres, is it? I mean, it's going to be.
It's not going to be the Ritz, certainly not. No, and there are lots of mock-up designs of what these bases might look like. Yeah. Generally, they're all a bit boring and exactly what you imagine, a sort of metallic husk. Sometimes it's built into the sort of the lunar regolith, and actually, a lot of the designs involve basically mining up this lunar rock and then using that to basically 3D print bases on the moon. So that would be a sort of relatively cheaper way to do it, because you're using building materials there rather than flying them up off Earth, which is
But if you're going to build
expensive.
it like a Four Seasons up there,
that would be lovely. But who could afford it? That's the problem.
Well, who could afford it? There is that.
Can barely afford hotels at home.
Well, given the breathtaking lack of speed that construction happens in this country, you sort of wondered, when you mentioned the 2030s, that might be to put like a little box up there that a human could sit in.
China's moon base might be very quick. If you look at their rate of building, they might have a Ritz in a couple of years.
They don't hang around.
They don't know. They get straight to it.
Yeah.
Whether it'll be safe, I don't know, but they really do build at speed.
There was a story, wasn't there, a couple of years ago? There was a terrible accident happened on a road in China, and a bridge collapsed, and God knows why, on a Friday afternoon. Monday morning, it was back.
Not surprised at all.
Oh, I hate to think what they made it.
Well, it's like the Stonehenge tunnel. That's been such a debacle, and then HS2 as well. It's like very difficult to build stuff.
Hasn't the Stonehenge tunnel has now been cancelled again? Hasn't it?
Been cancelled,
I think it's now, but they've been talking about it forever. It is a horrifying road to travel on, though, isn't it? Mainly because, of course, the rubberneckers. I mean, but there is a good reason to rubberneck on that
we
road.
avoid it.
You want to see the stones.
We go to Cornwall every year, and we always try to go avoid it.
Have you been to the Stones? Have you been into?
I've only ever driven it past.
You've never gone to Stonehenge?
I've never been to it.
It's underwhelming. No, well,
not magical. It didn't inspire you.
No, you go there. You want to see something, don't you?
You do.
Have you seen that great
An
video?
ancient ancestor.
Yes. Have you seen that great video when Obama went to see Stonehenge? No. And there's a guy, he's just a tourist with his kid, and he bumped. Obama was the president at the time as well. And he has this lovely chat with Barack Obama. If something like that had happened, if I'd gone there and met, I don't know, Donald Trump or something, you'd go, yeah, it was good. Not for the rocks, but I think when people go there, you are hoping for a little bit of a sort of a moment.
So I think it's one of those things where I feel like I've seen so much on pictures that I almost don't need to go. And maybe that's rubbish. Maybe I should still go, but I don't know. I feel like I've done it.
Yeah.
From afar.
And it's in all the films, isn't it? So does it matter? Who is the creator of Bitcoin? Now, because this forever has been a question, I find it a bit odd that they can't establish it. The last I read, it was some Japanese guy who was, the one that most people seem to think was responsible.
There have been so many contenders. You've got loads of people saying that they are the creator of Bitcoin. You've got other people who are saying they aren't, that people think they are. It's the official name for the person is Satoshi Nakamoto, but that is meant to be a pseudonym. We've long established that it's probably not the person's real name. And the New York Times has done this absolutely enormous piece. It's like 110,000 words, I think, basically analysing all of these early forum posts from decades ago where they were basically discussing the ideas for Bitcoins. And they've basically mapped it to the account of another person, this British man called Adam Back. He's in his 50s. He's a Bitcoin sort of entrepreneur himself. And they think it's him. They think that the language that he used on these old forum posts matches up exactly with Satoshi, who, is the creator of Bitcoin.
So, but why would the person that invented Bitcoin not come forward and go, yeah, it was me?
Well, you have to think about the origins of Bitcoin, which is very much government fearing. We don't want the government to have control over money. We create our own decentralized money system. And so those people are spooked by the government. And so this person probably rightly thinks, well, I don't want to put myself out in the limelight. But it's interesting because he has, the person who created it has an enormous amount of Bitcoin, something like $70 billion of Bitcoin that's not moving. It's just sitting there in an account. And people are waiting for it to move to see if the person who created it is still alive. Maybe it belongs to this Adam Back, who knows? But if he does, he's an extremely rich man. I mean, he's rich anyway because he's an entrepreneur. I think he's got a net worth of about $100 million. Right. But it's far short of the $70 billion that might be sitting in his account. He says he's not. He says, it is not me. But I read the New York Times piece. I think it's pretty convincing, to be fair. They used AI to map all the language out, and it makes a really good case.
So Bitcoin is a British invention?
Bitcoin, they should have called it Bitcoin, but that might have given him away.
Bitcoin, yeah, maybe that was what good point. Maybe that was his original plan, and someone said, you can't do that, Ad, because that'll
give you away.
That'll give you away.
It must be hard, though, to think I've got 50 billion sitting in an account, 50 billion pounds. I don't know if I could leave it floating there.
I reckon this guy, what was his name?
Adam Back.
Adam Back. I reckon I would call it Adam's Bitcoin. And therefore, I would completely, out of vanity, claim it forever. So people only ever used your name every time they spoke about it.
He's got strong moral character, clearly.
Let's just finally do this one. Kids being confused with technology and reality. This is, I mean, it's quite amusing, but it's also a bit disturbing.
This is a weird story. So The Works, which is the retailer, they put out this report on books, and it's got some fairly believable stats. You know, 8 in 10 parents think books could be rendered obsolete. Many kids only read because schools tell them to. 68% prefer games and apps over reading. I suspect it's probably higher than that. But the one that I thought was really interesting is, it says a third of parents surveyed said their kids would try to use books like tech, including pinching to zoom on pages and looking for an on button, which is terrifying.
In a book. So you open a book and then you start to try and... Yeah.
Weird,
I mean, I've seen kids do it on screens that aren't touchscreen, like in shops and stuff, because they'll just assume that they can make something move. But that's what, this is what we've created.
I did something similar to this, where I used the word scroll in like a real life conversation, where me and my wife were like sitting at like a sort of like desk, and I was like, should we scroll along? And I was like, no, what have I said?
Yes.
Freaking weird.
Scroll along.
Scroll along the table.
Can I bring you my own tech news as well, Sean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So I get so I've had a Kindle for since about 2012.
Oh, is this the bad? Oh no!
I love my Kindle. You probably know where this is going. So I get an email from Amazon this week saying, you know, hey, Kindle owner, we love you being a Kindle owner. You're the best Kindle owner in the world. However, because you got an older model, because you got it ages ago. It's no longer, we're no longer going to be supporting that model. So whilst you can still keep your Kindle and read all the stuff that's on it for the rest of time, you won't be able to download anything on it from May or June or something.
You're stuck with your collection.
So you've got to buy, but don't worry, we're going to give you 20% off a new Kindle. Well, a new Kindle's about 150 quid, and so 20% off, yeah, it's welcome, but I'm still paying out something that on Monday morning I didn't think I was going to have to pay out for.
And it's difficult to understand, because you think, well, the device is the same device. Why is it stopping working? Why is it cutting me off?
It's criminal, I think, that clearly they've done this on purpose, and that let's flog a few more Kindles. Because like, I always prided myself, every now and then I'd look at my Kindle, it's a little bit slow, and it's a tiny bit battered, but there's nothing wrong with it. I love it, and I've always thought this is going to be one of those, I'm going to go against the usual convention of the 21st century. This is something I want to own for life. I want to have this when I'm 70, to sit there and go, it's still the same Kindle from 2013. Wouldn't that be great? But it's not going to be anymore, so they've forced me to buy another one. However, when I went to buy it, shocker number 2, Sean, there were 2 prices for the same Kindle. One was ad-free, and I thought, ad-free? Right. So obviously when I bought mine, this technology didn't exist. So if I've got this correct, if I didn't buy the ad-free model, I'd be sitting there in the middle of my latest Mills and Boon, only for an ad for Sugar Puffs to pop up on the page.
You will get ads on your home screen on the Kindle if you don't pay the extra.
As I'm reading.
Which is, you know, I suppose some people will want the cheaper model and are happy to accept that.
It's only a tenner difference.
I probably wouldn't. I would probably pay the extra money.
So as you're reading, an ad could pop up.
Although I tend not to buy... I used to use a Kindle, and then I've sort of discarded it, and I've gone back to regular books. So it kind of annoys me, because there's lots of books that I read on my Kindle that now I don't have in my like physical bookcase.
You don't literally have
and
them,
it sort of begrudges. I
like, for most stuff, if I was reading a kind of factual book where there's a lot of images and stuff like that, graphs or whatever, then I'd want a book. But just reading stories, especially if you're reading something that's a bit throwaway, I love the Kindle.
Also, it makes you look very astute if you have books in the background on video calls.
Yes, I know.
Well. You can't just put a Kindle on the wall.
It's not the same, is it, really?
It's not the same.
Listen, Sean, good to see you again.
Thanks
Sean Keach with us, Head of Science and Technology at The Sun. Check out thesun.co.uk. Go to Sean's pages there. He and his team, great stories, lots to read about, all the stories we've talked about and more. Just gone 10 to 4. This is Talk.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just a reminder, by the way, 5 to 4, we're going to talk to Mark in just a second. Huge weekend of live sport, and Talk Sport has the whole thing covered all the way. Live commentary, the Grand National, extensive updates of the US Masters Golf, and, of course, the return of the Premier League after a bit of an Easter break. Kicking off Friday evening, crucial game at the bottom of the Premier League. This is absolutely vast down there. Where, arguably the best part of the football season so far is the bottom of the Premier League. The most interesting part. West Ham Wolves play West Ham must win. TalkSport will have exclusive commentary of table toppers Arsenal against Bournemouth. Well, you know what's happened to Arsenal lately, so that's not a shoe-in by any means. That's Saturday at lunchtime. And, of course, the Grand National live on air at 4 o'clock on Saturday from Aintree. And there'll be a special watch-along on Fight Night for Tyson Fury's return to the ring from 9 o'clock, which can be watched live on Talk Boxing YouTube channel. So loads to get into. It's only on TalkSport, and it starts this weekend. Mark's in Lincolnshire. Mark, what have you got for us?
Hi there, Ian.
Hi, yep. We've not got long, Mark, but if anyone can do it, you can do it.
Oh, bloody hell. I was going to tell you a breaking news story, but I might have to wait.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll wait till next week.
Yeah, it's just the redhead and his crazy bloody solar farms.
Yeah, it's got loads going on.
Here in beautiful Lincolnshire, where well, let's just say he's very much not welcome around here.
Yeah, well, it's your neck of the woods where this is happening, and this is
exactly
vast, this thing.
You literally, there's that many projects now in Lincolnshire. You can't go anywhere in this county without coming across a solar farm. Literally, there's that many of the bloody things.
Yep.
Just to give, people a bit of context, really, you're talking about, with all the different projects that they've got going here, including this new one that they're on about, you're talking about 30,000 acres. Now, that's the equivalent of about, up to about 80-odd Hyde Parks.
Yes. Yeah, I read that today.
Yeah.
I mean, this is... you can't imagine how big this thing could be, full of solar panels for 180,000 homes at best, but everybody knows it's not going to be that.
Well, this is it. I mean, Lincolnshire itself, as far as the green project's concerned, we're about 5 times the national average.
Yeah.
For things that they're doing, shall we say. So you've got all the bloody wind farms off the coast here.
Yeah. That's true.
It's absolutely disgraceful. And there's no consideration as to what future generations might want to do with that land.
Well, that's what's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because there's every chance that once it's there, to get rid of it afterwards will be, an absolute nightmare. Listen, Mark, I said it's got to be short, but you did it. Thank you very much indeed for that. Kevin O'Sullivan is here after the news. And his microphone's not plugged in. Dan in Hampshire says, afternoon, Ian, you're not alone. I feel exactly the same about WhatsApp. It just doesn't feel right. I'm in a dozen groups, but I hate it. Yeah, the groups, the plague. Nobody would be in a WhatsApp group, would they, Kev?
No, I don't entertain anything like that at all. You and I, WhatsApp to us doesn't even exist.
When I say goodbye to you in a few minutes, that's the last we will speak until tomorrow.
No communication whatsoever.
None at all.
Now.